Chambers. We recognize that we have a full council today. Councilmember Newell, Councilmember Harrison, Councilmember Freeman, Councilmember Stallings, Councilmember Lockhart. We welcome each of you to the dais. Glad you're here. We also welcome all those who are here joining us in the chamber today. I remind you this is a pre-council meeting, so there won't be public comment today until our meeting tonight a little later at 7. We'll start our meeting today with an invocation that I'll offer, and then we'll go to that point. Our Father in heaven, we bow our heads before thee, grateful for the opportunity we have to assemble today and to discuss the needs of this great city. We're grateful for the time and sacrifice that goes into these meetings and to these issues and items that will be talked about and discussed this evening. We're grateful for thy guiding hand and pray that that would continue to help us and guide us as we work together in providing solutions and providing ways forward. We pray, Heavenly Father, that would bless our city with water as we find ourselves in desperate needs, that the clouds may open and that we might receive the water that we need as we enter this spring season. We ask a special blessing to be continued with our first responders, that they might be watched over and protected, and that their families might also have that protection as they serve the public in their dire need of time. Again, we're grateful for the opportunity we have to assemble today and pray that we might do this work with kindness and with an eye forward. And these things we pray for humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Okay. We will start first with item number 1, with the presentation of the Park Tax Committee recommendations. And I believe, there we go. How are you?
How are you?
Good to see you. And we'll let you run.
Okay. Plugged in here, hopefully. Maybe. This worked. When did we do this? Last Thursday? Oh, was it coming? And then I just unplugged it. Sorry. Let's see. Oh, or do I need to do, because it is a Mac, do I need to screen share? There we go. 3, 4, 2. Ta-da! Start mirroring. Okay. Okay, but now where's my stuff? Should I unplug this? Ha! Okay. Technology. It's my favorite. Okay. I want to thank you all for the time today. My name is Lindsay Gaiman. We can't decide if this is my second or third year serving as the chair on the Park Tax Committee. I have been on the committee since its inception, and I think it's probably one of my most favorite volunteer assignments that I've ever had of any of the boards or commissions that I've served on. And I said this last year, and I will say it again this year, this was really hard. It gets more difficult every year. We get more requests. There's more conversation and more debate that happens around these requests that we get. But it really is just a really fun thing to be involved in, and I'm really grateful for that. So some statistics for you, assuming it's showing. There we go. Okay. So this year we reviewed applications from 16 different organizations. That's 2 more than last year. A total of 34 applications submitted. 7 of those were general fund allocation requests, which we'll talk about. Of the remaining applications, organizations requested a combined total of $895,172. That does not include the general fund allocations. That was about $493,000. Our committee of the $600,000 that we were given as budget, we are going to recommend funding of $541,004 in awards, leaving about $59,000 in unallocated funds. We had 15 requests or applications that we are going to recommend full funding, 4 that we're recommending partial, and 15 that we're recommending no funding at all. So before walking through those, I do just want to address council's request for us to look at general fund allocations and potentially using park funds maybe before we fund some of these other requests, or can we do it in part? And after a lot of deliberation and a lot of conversation, the committee is unified in its position that using park funds to cover general fund allocations first before we look at some of these other applications is inconsistent with the intent of the tax when it was presented to Lehi residents and when it was passed. This was placed on the ballot. It was communicated as a way to bring new and expanded arts and culture programming to Lehi, as well as parks and recreation. And so, that we feel that promise, the committee feels that promise was for growth and new opportunity, not just sustaining existing, organizational budgets that are already being funded through the general fund allocation. That being said, obviously there are some funds left over. There is, we are just given an estimate of what is available, so I know there are some additional funds that could be used for some of that. And we respect that it is ultimately council's decision. But with our conversation and our recommendation is that it is to let the park process, the grant process, work its way through before we look at maybe prioritizing those general fund allocations. So walk through the recommendations that we have. So these are the recommendations of no funding. So Futuro Futsal Academy and Utah Floorball Association, we felt did not meet the criteria of a cultural organization, nor was the programming or the funds that they were requesting for meet the definition of that arts and culture criteria. There's some organizations that also don't meet, the organization itself doesn't meet that criteria, but the funds that they're requesting or the programming that they're requesting to do, the committee feels does meet that criteria. So that's some additional discussion to have. But between the Futsal Academy and Floorball, we felt that the programming or the organization met the criteria. For Wrap the World with Quilts, there was a couple of applications they submitted for help with their Lehi service events and Lehi school events. The committee is not recommending funding for those programs. We feel that is more closely tied to that organization's humanitarian efforts and purpose, as opposed to the art of quilt making, which is what the committee has felt the last couple of years that they have applied is something that does qualify them for requesting grant funds. For the Lehi Arts Council, there's 3 of their 6 applications we are not recommending funding for: the upright piano, washer, dryer, and funfetti machines. These were lower priority items for the Arts Council, so definitely not a reflection of the committee's support for them, but just felt that maybe the organization could pursue other funding mechanisms for these particular items, and again, they were lower priority for them. United Angels Foundation, another organization that the organization itself does not necessarily meet the criteria of cultural organization, but some of their programming does. Their application for the social and life skills activities we did not feel met that criteria. We felt that was more social support, but they did have a couple of other applications that we have some recommendations on. And feel free to ask any questions at any point in time. So, partial funding, organizations that, these were cases that we supported the program's purpose or the purpose of the grant application, but we felt we needed to draw a line on what we felt was appropriate for park funds to be spent on versus not. So the Hutchings Museum requested $104,000 for support staff. We are recommending $45,000 of that. That $45,000 is specifically for the educator coordinator position that is tied to programming that the museum puts on. This is a position that was originally funded and created due to park funds, that with the help of park funds they were able to start this position. And as far as their reporting goes, it is pretty close to being able to sustain itself with the additional programming that they are able to offer at the museum. So the committee felt good continuing to support that position until it can be self-sustaining. But the additional request for staff support and staff recognition and professional development, the committee felt would be better funded from a different source besides park funds. Lehi's Historical Society requested $106,498 for some of their operating expenses. We're recommending $98,748 of that. This is one of those where we kind of went line by line through their application and decided what do we feel meets the criteria, or what do we feel like is a good use of park funds versus potentially not. So $64,000 for staffing includes payment for the part-time archivist and the fundraiser, with some additional support for the director. $24,748 for office and archive supplies, which is central to their mission. $5,000 for the historical marker unveilings. $5,000 for Lehi Heritage Days. We are not recommending funding for the collector pins. The grant did help that program get up and get started, but we feel like, it should maybe potentially be paying for itself, at least to be able to continue that, as well as, hopefully raise some funds for the organization as well. We also did not recommend funding for the 4th grade trading card program. We felt like that was a very narrow focus, and would like to see how it plays out in the schools if it is something that becomes popular. But again, that's another one that we thought there might be some other potential funding sources, since it is more education related for that program. The committee really is supportive of that fundraiser position as well, because again, that's something that, with a little bit of help to get started, that's something that could really help the Historical Society become more self-sustaining and not have to rely on city funds so much. Wrap the World with Quilts. Again, they requested $161,141. We're recommending about $30,000 to cover, again, some of those expenses they have that are related to the art of quilt making. So things like their sewing machines and the space that they have where Lehi residents can come in and volunteer to sew quilts, or they can learn how to sew quilts as well. We felt that again, that cultural element that's tied to the art of quilting is important, but not the broader humanitarian mission of the organization. Thanksgiving Point requested $146,036 for their Grow Tech Gardens. The committee is recommending partial funding of $87,000 for that. We landed on this. We feel that $82,000 for the 2 positions that are needed to operate that program, so a Grow Tech manager and an assistant manager, and then an additional $5,000 for an honorarium to the Diné and Navajo tribes that they partner with for their Harvest Festival that celebrates that program. We feel the program itself is strong and very culturally meaningful, but again, just want to try to, the committee does have concerns about ongoing reliance on these grant funds, for operations. Happy to support for new programming and pieces and parts of that, but don't necessarily want to become the full funding source for those. Okay, now the fun part, full funding. We had about 15 applications that we recommended for full funding. I'm going to start with the organizations that are based in Lehi. As a committee, we do prioritize organizations that are operating in Lehi and providing programming in Lehi. So we'll start with them. Hutchings Museums request $4,500 for storage and security. This helps them to safeguard and store the exhibits that are not currently in use. Just for Kids of Utah County requested enhanced production lighting. Again, another organization where the group itself doesn't necessarily fit the definition of cultural organization, with their focus on special needs support, but the Curtis Center itself being a city-owned building, available not only for Just for Kids productions, but for other entities to rent out and use, we felt that would be a valuable use of park funds to enhance the lighting there and make it a little bit better, not just for their productions, but for anyone that uses that facility. Lehi Area Music Association requesting $12,500 for operations and growth, an additional musical instrument. This is an application that always receives unanimous support from the committee. Even in our first year, the first year they requested funds and we were not able to give it to them because of requirements. But we've been able to make some changes to the park tax policy itself and the way that we look at volunteer hours and those types of things. And this is one of those organizations that truly lives up to that standard. They have strong community impact. They involve a lot of people. They entertain a lot of people across Lehi and across the county. They are very volunteer-driven and very, they're very careful with their financial management. And so we do recommend funding in full some of those additional musical instruments so that they can add and grow to the Lehi Silver Band. Lehi Arts Council requested for show rights, set cost and rental, new mover lights, and electricity to the garage. The Arts Council does a lot in the city of Lehi, and we recognize that things like show rights and some of those lights and electricity are essential to their operations and their ability to offer programming. And it does represent some pretty core infrastructure that ties directly to the work that they deliver to our community. And last, for the Lehi-based organizations, is the Roundup Rodeo. This one earned the highest score across our matrix, but also generated the most debate, I think, just trying to determine, is it cultural, is it not? I would love to hear what some of your opinions are. We did receive this afternoon some good news that the Roundup Committee did obtain 501c3 charitable organization status. That was obviously the first thing hinging on whether or not we could provide any funds to them or not. But that really wasn't the debate. That was kind of a cut and dry question, but now that they have that, is it sport, is it culture? There was a lot of back and forth and a lot of conversation on this one. And ultimately, we did land on the Roundup Rodeo being part of Lehi's heritage, part of Lehi's culture, part of the American West, which is where we live. I think if we lived in, New England and somebody was coming for the first time and saying, we want to put on a rodeo here, that would have been a different story. But just given the historical aspects and the area that we live in, we do feel that it would be good use of funds to contribute that to the rodeo so that they are able to, better work on some of the infrastructure changes that they're going to have to make over the next couple of years. Continuing on, the committee recognizes that some of our strongest applications come from organizations that are based outside of Lehi. They don't have a Lehi address. But their work and their efforts do land within our city boundaries and within our community. And we feel that the cultural value that these programs bring to our residents and the visitors that they in turn draw to our city is exactly the kind of impact that the park tax was meant to support. So Chabad of Utah County puts on a Hanukkah festival every year. They were doing this in Provo for a number of years. Last year they were able to do it here in Lehi because they outgrew their capacity in Provo. So bringing it to Lehi gives them more options to allow more people to come and celebrate and learn about the culture of Hanukkah and be more involved with the festival. There was some conversation last year. Again, is this a cultural organization? Well, no, it's a religious one, but the event that they're putting on is based in the culture, not necessarily the religious aspect of the organization. Grassroots Shakespeare Company is, they again also based out of Lehi, but have a strong commitment to educational programming in Lehi. They make Shakespeare fun and approachable and understandable. I don't know how many of you totally understood Shakespeare when you read it in high school. I know I definitely didn't. But the committee does recommend full funding for the events that they want to put on, contingent on them scheduling events and classes and workshops with our two Lehi high schools, with Skyridge and Lehi. They applied last year and were granted funds with that same contingency, and they understand the impact that makes and how important that is to the committee. Harrington Center for the Arts requested for both Chalk It Up and the exploration of new works. The committee was also in strong support of both of these. Chalk It Up is very family friendly, a great event. They were able to line up the dates so that it coincides with Roundup Week, so it just expands the things that are available during Roundup Week to Lehi families and our visitors. The exploration of new works is equally well regarded. It's an opportunity for local writers to gain experience and for local residents to be able to participate in that process and get that entertainment. So Nashville in the Rockies, $6,000 for outdoor concerts in Lehi. This is one of our new organizations that requested funding. We felt it was a modest request and so appropriate to provide that funding. Again, it's going to be contingent on them being able to schedule their concerts and activities. They are looking at Family Park So something to add to kind of the calendar of events of things that go on in Lehi in the summer would be another great thing to be able to add. United Angels Foundation, I mentioned them earlier. 2 of their applications were for particular programming that we felt did meet that cultural element of the grant. So the sensory-friendly Lunar New Year celebration and their spring break mini art camps that they hold at the Legacy Center. So again, bringing more people to Lehi from around the county and providing access to different cultural events for those in the special needs community. And last, Wasatch Contemporary Dance. Jill Algier, who's been one of our committee members since the beginning, was able to attend their Savor event that they put on last year and said it was just incredible. There's a lot of dance, and there's a lot of dance schools and dance performances and competitions that go on, but this is unique. They put on very unique programs and performances. They also provide workshops for Lehi high school aged dancers that exposes them to new types of dance and people outside of just their local schools, and we feel that that's a good impact and a good use of park tax funds. So for the general fund allocation requests, as I outlined before, our position is that a lot of these provide more baseline operational support and not necessarily new or expanded programming. And we feel that using park funds to cover those before we look at some of these other opportunities that we have to fund new programming would be inconsistent with what voters approved for this tax to do. Again, ultimately, this is council's decision. We're happy to answer any questions that you have. There usually are a little bit of residual funds left over at the end of this. Obviously, that is something that could very easily be allocated to one of these organizations or spread across some of these organizations to help ease that burden on the general fund. We do recognize that. And like I said, I know there is some, what's the word for it, Matt? The excess? Fund balance. There's fund balance available that could also be used for that. But again, I think we do need to be careful because those are tax funds designated under a specific park. We do need to make sure that they are going to organizations that meet the qualifications of receiving funds from that grant. I would hate for us to be in violation of any of that and run into some trouble there. So with that, or if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Is it normal for the park tax to be spent on staffing? Like, is that a common practice?
It is. So the very first year of this tax being in place and being on the committee, there was an organization that requested a large amount, and our committee vehemently did not agree with it. But then we learned a little bit afterwards that yes, park tax, the ZAP tax, RAP taxes, things like that, not just across the state of Utah but across the country, are typically used for. That is a very valid use of these types of funds. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a question. So I thought you said Grassroots Shakespeare is located in Lehi?
No, they are not located in Lehi. But they put on, they will do workshops for Lehi high schools.
I was reading over this guidelines for the park tax. It says that qualifying organizations requesting amounts of $10,000 and $1 or more shall be required to provide financial reports for their organizations prepared by a certified public accountant and it gives it all like complete fiscal year if it's 100,000 or more. Mm-hmm. Have you guys received all those? Have you reviewed those?
Yes. Yeah, okay. That's part of, and I probably should have kind of given this overview at the beginning since some of you are new to the council. So how it works is we have an application period that opens. Staff, which is currently Matt Lee, receives all of those applications in, and they filter through those to decide what fits, what doesn't, who goes where. and he might be able to speak more to that. But yes, part of that full application that they're filling out is providing all of that financial information, and that's dependent on the size of grant that they are requesting. And so, yes, we receive that. It's reviewed. If they didn't have that information or if it didn't meet the qualifications, then their application would be rejected. I think we would probably give them an opportunity to provide corrections if there was any, but if they didn't meet those qualifications, then we wouldn't be able to, or we might only be able to partially fund their request. And that's actually what happened with the Lehi Area Music Association our very first year. They operate primarily on volunteer hours, and so their operating budget was very low, and we could only give them 50% of their operating budget, which was like $600 or something like that. And so that was when the committee came back to council and asked if we could consider, which they did approve, adding in volunteer hours. So there's a calculation that is used nationwide as well as by state to determine, okay, if I have 100 volunteer hours, that's where I think it's like $32 or $34 per hour is the value that adds to an organization. So if they have volunteer hours, they're able to add that into those financials as well.
Just since we're making the final decision, I'd love to have the city council see those reports prior to making a decision in the future. If you guys have seen them, it would make sense for us to see them also. Okay.
I assume that's something. Yeah,
They should have been in the packet. The 260-page packet. I believe, you probably read the whole packet. I'm sure you did.
Yeah. So continue with the rest of the process, right? So the applications come in, staff reviews those, filters out what is and isn't allowed, and then the committee. We get a copy of those. We review those applications. We usually set up a couple of 2-hour meetings where each applicant is allowed to come in and present to us for about 10 or 15 minutes. It gives them an opportunity to explain a little bit more. It allows us to ask them some questions. And then we get together for about a 3-hour meeting where, we get a scoring matrix, a spreadsheet that we all use. We score those individually. Matt compiles those scores, and then we get together and hash it all out. And it's a fun time if you ever want to sit in.
I will make sure you have those. So I think they came through, so we'll just double check. Thank you.
Mayor, can I ask?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask a follow-up question. You said volunteer hours are calculated at how much per hour?
I can't remember the exact amount. It's either 32 or 34 something.
Okay.
I don't know.
Thank you.
You might know because you calculate it.
It's roughly 34.
Yeah, about $34 an hour, yeah. And it's a standard, third-party calculation that we get from the state, so.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. Thank
Appreciate
you.
your input. Okay, we will go to item 2, presentation of the budget amendment number 4 from the Finance Department. Mr. Dean.
Thanks. I'll be quick. There's 3 things on this amendment, and the amendment's not going forward to council until April 14th. We'll have a public hearing that day, and this is kind of a new routine that we're doing, try to maybe talk about them earlier, which would probably make some sense. So I'm just going to go through, there's 3 on here. I actually want to talk about 2 other things really quickly, and we can add them to this one that goes on the 14th, or we can wait. We'll do one more budget amendment in June. There's really not an urgency to get it done, but if it's okay, we'll put it on there as well. So the first one was we received a COPS grant. That's a federal grant that allows us to pays a portion of police salaries for a period of time. Eventually, we'll absorb that full cost. But so we've received $70,000 for that grant, but we still need it in the budget. In order to spend it, we still need council's authorization to spend it. So that's the first one. The second one is project on the Oak Hollow well, which I don't know if we have a public works person here, but I think I can explain it well enough. It's a pressurized irrigation well that is critical to the Traverse area, I believe. It's on the east side over there, and it's struggling, so they're going to have a project to reline it and just allow it to go. When Matt was talking to me about that earlier, it was $500,000. I just got this today that the bid's about $630,000. So that's money that would be paid out of pressurized irrigation, out of water reserve funds. The third one on here is police overtime. So with the UVU shooting that happened last year, the state has asked for more police presence on campus. I think they are going to fund some extra police officers over time, but there's been a request for other agencies to fill that staffing need until they can get those hired. We've had officers over there for a time. I did mention on here that, so they're paying the cost, they're paying the overtime rate, but they're not covering the Social Security and Medicare taxes and the workers' comp. That's going to be our portion. So that's the $300,000. One thing that I should have had on there that I didn't, so our firefighters, sometimes they will participate with wildland firefighting. We send crews, we send equipment out there. We get reimbursed for that. We get reimbursed for the cost of their wages, the cost to backfill, the fact that there aren't people there at the time, and for the cost of equipment. So we've received grants of about $153,000. $104,000 of that will go right back to the fire department budget. This is one that I mentioned. I forgot to put it on this one. If it's okay, I'll put it on in April. If you'd rather, I can wait. And then the difference between that, this was adopted last year, is that's going to be just committed, kind of set aside to purchase future fire equipment and things like that. So the difference between the 153 and the 104, so about $50,000 will go into that fund. The last item that, again, I apologize it wasn't on here, but I learned about it just last week, associated with the COPS grant that we received. So our police equipment, by and large, is on a subscription service. We used to buy equipment and then replace it over time. Now you rent it, I guess, along with the software that runs it. So we have about $11,500 in equipment to equip those officers and pay that subscription for them for this year. So that's on there as well. So that's it. If it's okay, I will add those to the one that's on the April 15th agenda, unless there's concerns. I could do them in the June one also.
Any questions for Dean?
Okay.
I think you're good.
Do it in April. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just one question. Do you want to discuss, or I don't know if our fellow council members, do we want to discuss the park items while we're up here, or are we good just moving on?
That was going to be an agenda question, so thank you for bringing that up.
I'm open right now. If you want to discuss it right now, I'm
Okay, I
open
just want to make sure.
Yep.
I guess I'll go since I brought it up.
I yield you 5 minutes.
My brain's on a 5-second lag time, so I really appreciate the committee's diligence with this, and thank you, Lindsay, for presenting the way you did. I know this year is unusual compared to past years, and you guys did the best that you could with what you had, and made solid recommendations. So I appreciate that. And just to note, I think the grants. So I think the committee was instructed to have a ceiling of about $600,000, but the total amount within that category is about $1.1 million, and that extra funds that came from leftover from previous years, it cannot be reallocated. It's still within that grant application bucket. So I think, my personal goal for some of these organizations, I mean, I love all of what they're doing. I love what Hutchings does. I think the goal is to strengthen these organizations so they're more self-sufficient, but not doing it in a way that puts them at risk. And, there's a large, I think the total amount for some of these are, 2, 3, approaching $400,000 total. I think we have an opportunity to help these organizations maintain some level of funding, but over time become more self-sufficient so that there are more opportunities for additional grant applicants down the road. My personal principle on this is not facilitating a permanent subsidy through the park grant program, but rather facilitating opportunity and benefit to the residents. So I think as we look at these, and Jason, let me know kind of what instruction you would like, and Matt and Lindsay as well. But those are just my thoughts, and I'd like to hear the thoughts of my colleagues.
Well, yeah, my understanding with the general fund allocations is that we are trying to have organizations apply and to show a need, and instead of just automatically getting the funding. I don't know, because I wasn't on the council last year when this decision was made, but that was my understanding. And that, and hopefully that they will transition to, this isn't an entitlement, this is not a given, this is something that will transition to these applications show a need. So I do think that, there are some that have significant requests, and I appreciate the recommendations by the park committee. And I agree with most of them. One thing else that I saw when I was looking through the recommendations for the guidelines for the park was the operating expenses are recommended to only fund half of operating expenses. So for the Lehi Historical Society, that would actually have it go down to $53,000. They were asking for $106,000 for operating expenses. That's one of the guidelines, that we only fund up to 50% of that, which I like the Lehi Historical Society. So that's not something, or Historical Society, that's something that I would want to do, but that's a guideline there. And I do see some benefit for some of the general fund allocations, as many of them are considered cultural, would be considered in a cultural organization or cultural aspect requests.
Yeah, I think the thing with the general fund allocation is that, as I've looked at other cities don't have that. Like I reached out to Temp Arts, they receive almost $250,000 each year from American Fork through Park. They don't receive anything in general fund, and I kind of feel like that when we did the park tax, that's really where those funds should be going through. That said, I think because we flipped it this year, there's been a lot of trepidation about what does that mean, that organizations are not going to be funded. But we have to realize this is just the park tax grant portion of it. And right now there's a cap of $600,000 that we're looking at, even though there's some additional funds there. So there's no way to fund all of the needs through just this park tax allocation, unless we look at some of these other things too. So I know a lot of organizations have had concerns about that this could be something cut very quickly, but that none of us want to see any of these organizations hurt or go away. We want to make sure they're supported, but we also, part of that needs to be that we need to support them in ways that they can become more sustainable themselves. And so I think we all support that as well, that we love these organizations, we want to see them thrive, but also realize that we can't fund everything with $600,000. But I do think that this is the appropriate use for when it comes to nonprofit organizations that are not under the city's umbrella, that they should be going through this park tax process. And I would love to see any other cities that do fund. I mean, it's almost $500,000 that Lehi has funded in past years out of our general fund. Taxpayers are paying for nonprofit donations and subsidies. And I think we've had some great things in Lehi because of that, but I don't think it's the proper way and the proper order of the funding and just how it should go. I really want to support our organizations here in Lehi. I think that's why, it was supported for the arts and culture portion of the park tax. But we also want to make sure that they're, just like organizations in other cities do have to go out and get other funding to help support them. It just can't be a complete subsidy from the city. Otherwise, it should be wholly under the city's umbrella, if that's the case. So I just want to put people at ease to know that we are not looking to close any organization or shut any organization down, that I think we're all very supportive of our culture and arts. But there's just a better methodology to how we allocate funding from the city.
Mayor, may I ask a question of staff? Yep. This is for Dean and or Matt. Can you clarify if we are, if those, the grant fund balance is available to distribute.
Yeah, so that fund balance in there, I believe it's 568,000. It's in there. So that's built up over the past 4 or 5 years. It is available to use. The committee didn't dip into it in consideration, but if you choose to use it, by all means, yeah, so it's available.
Is there a reason there's such a high amount in the reserves?
Lindsay touched on it. We don't award the full amount every year.
Just build up.
Yeah,
Okay.
and sometimes park tax collections come in higher than we anticipate, so they just add up over the years.
Okay, it just adds up. There's no specific reason to save it. Okay, thank you.
I
So
should also
I-
say, Michelle, too, I know that there's organizations who've received grants and then they didn't fulfill it. Like Regalo did take their $60,000 one, so there's some of those too.
So I appreciate the park grant committee for all the work they did. We're going through budgets. It's hard. You want to give everything to everybody. I am going to disagree a little bit about the intent of the park grant as it was passed by voters. The language on the ballot proposition specifically states that the sales and use tax would be to help fund recreational amenities, park facilities, and cultural arts facilities and organizations in Lehi City. So when we look at the criteria, I know the park committee has gone through and developed that over time. But the two criteria that I'm going to look at the most is the original ballot language that was approved by voters. That made it possible, and so I think that's important to look at, and especially when it says organizations in Lehi City. I actually had a call from a previous city council member who was on the council when this was voted on and approved and the language was developed, and I asked him about the intent, and he said it was for these nonprofits that are here in Lehi that used to be under the city but now were separated out. So the intent, according to him, and I'm thinking the language in the ballot proposition as well, is that the intent is to fund those organizations here in Lehi City that have they're longstanding organizations, and we value them a lot. And the other criteria that I'm looking at is also in state code, which is also pretty explicit that a cultural organization means a private nonprofit organization or institution having as its primary purpose the advancement and preservation of natural history, art, music, theater, dance, or cultural arts, including literature, motion picture, or storytelling. So there's a lot of good organizations asking for funding. Their purposes are noble, but I don't believe that their primary purpose is cultural, as defined in state code. And I made sure to look them up. I looked up IRS 990 forms where they have to state their purpose there to see what those their primary purpose were. So I feel that there's a lot of things that were approved that doesn't necessarily fit under state code as far as park grants go. So my thoughts and recommendations are to fund, one, those that their primary purpose is cultural, and two, that they are located in Lehi City. So that will take out a lot of organizations, but I think there might be room to fund them if we feel they're important, maybe through the general fund if we want to go that way. But I we've got a lot of applicants this time around where, you can argue just about anything is cultural, sports activities or humanitarian things. So I just think going forward we just need to be clear and clean on abiding by what that definition is. I strongly feel that we should fully fund the organizations that meet that criteria, and so that will include the Arts Council and the Hutchings Museum and the Historical Society and others. I have talked with the Hutchings Museum, and we have been working towards getting them to be more self-sufficient. We've been on that path for a while since I've been given the assignment to be a liaison with them. And they are working diligently towards that, and I appreciate their efforts. And I know their ask this time around was quite large, and I know that caused some concerns for some of the other council members. So I reached out to staff and asked them, what do you need to stay afloat, to stay open? And so they were willing to go down with the general fund allocation down to $200,000, and they were good with the security at $4,500 and the staffing at $45,000. So they were willing to give up almost $100,000 to make it a little easier to vote for. And they have the clear understanding that going forward, next time around will be a little less. I'm just concerned if we, cut their funding, that will put a beloved museum out of business, and we don't want to do that. So as they work towards the goal of being more self-sustaining, I think we need to exercise a little patience on their part, and they've been through some rough things, and they're dealing with a lot of challenges. So I hope we can support them and continue to fund their needs as they work towards their goal of standing on their own feet. So that's my opinion.
Well, I really appreciate all the thoughts shared by my colleagues up here. This is my first time on the council doing a park tax allocation, so I'm learning a lot, and I'm actually very open to having my thought process challenged on this. I think a lot about how what we're faced with this year as we've sat through budget meetings. We have a limited amount of funds that we can use to fund some of the priorities department by department. And those are, a lot of those priorities are essential services, and they don't get to double dip in an additional tax. And so I'm struggling to understand why we would allow nonprofit organizations to not only receive park tax funding, but also general fund. And so as I think through it, I think about what the general fund is for, and I think about what the park tax is for, and trying to make it fair for all who receive funding from Lehi. And so as it sits right now, I do like the idea of keeping kind of this new concept, I guess, of having park tax fund these things, and the general fund being not a default, but something that would actually be spent more on essential services. And again, it goes back to those who are coming to us asking for our surplus in that arena don't have the opportunity to double dip. And those are essential services that the community relies on. And I also strongly believe that arts and recreation have made a massive impact in my life and in the life of my children and my community. I'm fully supportive of that. But I want to find a way to treat everyone somewhat the same. And so, like I said, my first time being through it, I'm completely open to having my thoughts challenged on this. I'm not, I'm moldable in understanding, and maybe it's a multi-year progression to that outcome. But I'm so grateful for those of you in the room that are from these organizations. Thank you for all that you do for Lehi, and thank you for what the benefit you provide. I want to be supportive to that, but I'm looking for ways to provide fairness for all who receive funding from Lehi and a tax benefit from Lehi. And I don't know if giving the general fund allocation and allowing the double dip is giving fairness to our essential services as well. So anyway, as we continue down this path, like I asked my colleagues to feel free to challenge my thoughts, and I'm open to debate and look forward to funding all that we can in supports of the arts and recreation. Excuse me.
Mayor, may I make a point of clarification? So I'm not sure what you mean by double dipping, but to clarify, and we've been through this last year. The intent was to move what was normally a general fund allocation to some of these nonprofit organizations, to move that from the general fund to the park grant to free up general fund monies to provide for city services, essential city services. So this is part of that transition to be less dependent on the cities and more self-reliant. This is one step in that process. So there isn't, if we fund what is, I guess, listed here as general fund, I don't know what they listed it as, allocations, it's not, it was in the past a general fund contribution, but we were moving it towards the park grant. That was a recommendation of city administration and staff. I've talked to the organizations I'm involved with, and they were willing to do that. It's a lot more work for them, and it's also, kind of unknown if they would actually get funded or not. So I appreciate them doing that, what was asked of them, and kind of taking this leap of faith. So I hope we'll honor that path forward and fund these organizations through the park grant as intended.
I think I'll just add, I think I like the direction we've moved in freeing up general funds. I think that's a very positive direction because, like Councilmember Lockhart and Salling said, we need to use the general fund for essential government services. And so I like that these organizations are now in the park process. It's also a competitive process, right, where it resets every year and it's evaluated year by year. And so I think if we want to, I guess, at least give direction, I assume, Jason, this will come up for a vote at some point in the next few meetings. So, I mean, I like, and thank you, Councilmember Stallings, for being the liaison with Hutchings, because I think we could, especially with the extra funds in the account, we can fund the 250 with the understanding that this is going to come down over time as they strengthen their marketing and their operations to be to kind of close that margin between costs and revenue. So at least with Hutchings, I think that's a good path forward. I'm very comfortable using that excess grant money because I don't know. I mean, there's no other use for it. It's just kind of sitting there and growing, which I'd rather put it back into the community. But I don't know if there's any other line items that we should discuss before we give direction to staff to put it up for a vote at a future meeting.
I mean, do you just want to go line by line? Start with Shabbat.
Do you want us to put it up on the screen? Would that be helpful, or?
You can do this however you want.
One thing I have a question about is for the Chalk It Up event, is that something that Lehi Roundup requests them to participate in? Is that just something that Harrington Center does? Is that a Lehi City? We're asking them to do that?
I missed it. I was pulling this up. Sorry.
You're fine. A couple of years ago, last year was the first year that the Chalk It Up Festival aligned with Roundup Days, and Harrington did go through the process of getting it approved by the Roundup Committee as an official Roundup event. So it's not just that they do it in the same week; it is now an official Roundup event.
Any other questions, or do we want to go line by line?
I think it'd be
We need
good
more discussion, yeah.
if we went line by line, at least for so that we can vote on it at the next meeting, if that's okay with everyone.
I do have a question. Just this was put on the agenda as a presentation, but not as a working discussion item. If there are any of these organizations who would want to be here for us working through the numbers, would we need to be very clear that we're going to have a working discussion item? I just don't want to have any of these organizations miss the opportunity to engage at this level when the agenda only says it was a presentation.
Have they engaged in I guess in previous years for Heather and Michelle? It's just,
There's no public comment at this time.
okay.
They engage with the park committee, right? When they come to present to you.
Yes, they do come to present to the committee.
I would appreciate the opportunity to ask them some questions as well. But if we want to have this today, that's fine. I just, I thought I'm going to get the acronym wrong. It's the dyslexia, the CBDG. Yes, that funding
Just say it
experience.
really fast. And
Whatever,
it's fine.
like whatever that acronym is, that one. When they came and engaged with us at that level, I felt like that was very productive. And while the park tax committee does this in their own right, now that we're taking a bit of a different approach this year, we might find value there. Again, I'm happy to do this today. I just want to make sure these organizations have had an opportunity to also engage with the council if we're going to go this route. But I mean, it's up to you guys. I'm just calling attention to something.
Yeah, I think this is a discussion item where we can put numbers to things and then kind of look at it. And then we're not voting on this tonight. So I think it's an exercise to go through and look at each one, see where everyone's feeling, see what we need to do. We'll give you an opportunity to reach out before they're voted upon. So I'm okay to continue the discussion. So let's start with line item 1. You want me to start and lead this? Sure. So the Shabbat of Utah County recommended amount was $10,000. How's the council feeling about that?
I have a question, though. It might be useful. I wonder if we look at it holistically, because it's not just the Hutchings Museum that received contributions. We have a number of organizations that really received quite a lot. So I wonder if we need to decide if that's something we pursue, because if we want to do that, it might change how we fund all the others. And again, personally, I would like to stick to the language in state law that we stick to those that have a primary purpose being arts and culture, but the others might think otherwise. Does that make sense? So if we start here and like, oh yeah, 10,000 is fine, we might by the end, not have enough to fund those what would normally come from the general fund. So
I think we
we go
still
backwards?
would, especially if we're aligned on 250 for Hutchings. I think the total amount for all former general fund allocations is $493,000, but we would be taking some of that off of at least Hutchings. So I think with the excess funds that we have, I think it still all fits. So it's just a matter of whether we think they qualify or not.
Okay, since there's larger amounts at the end, why don't we start at the end and go backwards? Is that okay, Mary?
No. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
You want to start the general fund?
Sure.
portions?
Yep. Okay. Museum of Natural Curiosity. I saw there was an agreement between Lehi City and Thanksgiving Point for this in the past. It is not a binding agreement. I don't think that it fits within what is considered a cultural organization or cultural or art or anything like that. So unfortunately, I would say no to that. Anyone else?
Let me ask a quick question before we proceed, and this might help answer your question. So all those recommendations are 0. Is there any on that would be a recommend yes that came out of the park? And I think maybe we start there. And obviously I've heard a little bit about the Hutchings Museum. That may be where we start. Would there be any other there that would, remember now we're going to pull into the reserve pot, but are there any other there that we want to discuss? So Councilmember Freeman brings up the 2. I think we start with the Hutchings. Obviously, that's the main one we're discussing first. So let's start there. Is there any of the other ones that we need to look at?
I think the butterfly biosphere. I think that is natural history. When you look at the definition of natural history, Lehi Arts Council, Lehi Historical Society and Archives, the Lehi Area Music Association. To me, those are all cultural organizations. or meet the definition of what is cultural, has an impact with natural history, art, music, theater, dance, and cultural arts.
Yeah, excuse me, I'd agree with that. And also, I hate to remind you, the Hutchings Museum said they would go down to 200,000 if needed. I'm sure they would love that extra 60,000. So, but if it gets tight, they're willing to make that sacrifice, even though it might be rough for them. So,
I think with that, I would think it is appropriate to fund them $200,000. And not more.
And just to clarify, not out of the general fund or out of the
So
general
this
fund?
is not general
This
fund,
is
this
park.
is park with a
Okay,
C.
I guess what I'm looking at is general fund
It's the
allocation.
previously.
Right.
general
And
fund,
I
yeah.
just wanted to make sure that you're saying yes, fund at the 200,000, but from the park tax.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that's what I heard.
200,000 in this category plus the other two items, which would bring it up to 250. Is that what we're saying? So the two,
Then it would be 45 for the other
45
requests. Yeah, 45 plus 4,500.
yeah.
And I think that my impression is that we would do it this year, but in the future years, they're going to need to make applications for any funding, not just a blanket general fund allocation. I would like to see, like, what we're talking about staff support, or if we're talking about storage, what are we talking about here? I think that would be appropriate, just so it can fit in the same category, so we don't have this vague general fund allocation.
yeah. And I think in their applications, they kind of spelled that out, but I think that's a good point.
Well,
To
it-
and
yeah, it
avoid
does say-
confusion.
It does say operating support, but if we're looking at that, then it says that we can only fund up to 50% of their operating expenses, so.
So Hutchings would be 200 in this line item.
Yes.
I guess out of the rest of them, the only question I have, I guess, is the butterfly biosphere and the Museum of Natural Curiosity. In my mind, the museum seems a little closer to something like Hutchings with natural history, but I'm happy to debate that just because
Both
I
of
think my
them?
wife would know far more about this than I would.
Yeah.
Funding both of
To
them?
me, the Museum of Natural Curiosity, very fun place. To me, it's more of a STEM kind of thing, and it's been a while since I've been there. Yeah, the Butterfly Museum, I could totally see that as a natural history-ish kind of museum. But
Yeah, butterfly, I mean, it's all about bugs and butterflies, which is natural history, so I think that's, for me, a given.
Then I'd be supportive of the biosphere. I don't think I would be supportive of the Museum of Natural Curiosity.
I'd be supportive of both, just because of the organization, also that there's a commitment there. I would rather see this go through the park tax grant rather than be pushed into the general fund. I think they're very closely aligned with what we're doing with Hutchings, but I would rather see it there rather than put it through general fund. And I think that there's funding to do that, especially considering how much Thanksgiving Point contributes to Lehi and our economy, especially when you're considering the amount that they do, the size of it, the impact that they have on the area versus, you know, some of the smaller ones that do take a larger funding source.
do we have a commitment there? I thought
We don't.
that was clarified that.
Well, there was an agreement, it's not binding, but there was agreement made for 20 years for $50,000 per year to the Museum of Natural Curiosity for capital improvements for the museum.
But it's not binding.
Neither one of those are.
Yeah, and again, with Hutchings Museum, we've dug into some documents, and there's some language there that could be viewed as providing funding, but it doesn't bind the council to that, and I'm very cautious of that kind of thing. I don't want to hold future councils to these kind of commitments. So, yeah, Does it fit? Yeah, I agree.
I mean,
with you.
I'm reading over their application. They say it's for the waterworks area, which if we look at that, that would be considered with like geology or kind of some of that things when they go there, kids are playing and trying to show the direction that they can have water go and how it influences things. So, I mean, that does fall under natural history, but I do see lots of people from Thanksgiving Point here, so they can probably answer that for us too.
You're right. I see arguments both ways, so I'm not firm on that.
Do you take a straw poll on each one of these and discuss if we need to discuss?
I have an idea. What we could do is have the council each get a copy of this Excel spreadsheet. They put in their own numbers, staff compiles it, and we look, next meeting we can see everyone's numbers next to each other. I think that would go a lot faster and help us visualize everyone's priorities. What we're doing right now, line by line, is going to take a lot of time, where if staff puts all of our collective efforts up, we could see everyone all at once, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
that would just require next meeting, but this is a presentation anyway, not a work item.
I do like hearing the arguments, and my mind can change on things, so I like the discussion. If we need to save it for another time, that's okay.
Well, I think we can all agree with Lehi Area Music Association.
Okay.
Lehi Arts Council, yes. Lehi Historical Society, yes. Does anyone object to any of those?
It's good.
So the only ones we need to decide on are the two Thanksgiving Point.
Well, I think we
Just
agreed
for
on the
kids.
butterfly biosphere, unless there's objections to that.
I don't have objections to that.
Or
To
we can
the-
see
to
where
the
we're
basket.
at too, and come back to it one way or another.
That's true.
I can see an argument for it, so appreciate that.
So what?
So,
You-
put it
Those ones
there.
We're debating in our brains.
So you could put the 50 on the natural curiosity
I thought we were debating that.
and both. Like there's three of that are pretty good. I think that's there. Again, we'll come back and vote. So I think there's consensus there. Any comments on just for Kids Utah County?
I'm looking up their application. Hold on. Anyone else? Emily?
Really like my idea of doing this on our own, compiling it, looking at it, and having a productive discussion line by line after we've all kind of put our thoughts down. It'll go a lot faster.
Yeah.
I think I've already kind of done this since we got the packet, so I'm ready to go. But I don't think we have to discuss every line item. So
Are we, Councilmember Stallings, are you good with the discussion that's been had to move forward if staff sends this out, based on the conversation that we've had with these park tax and the reserves moving forward? Are you comfortable? Is there any other questions or comments that we can answer, or discussion items that you feel like we've maybe missed on?
So does Commissioner or Councilmember Lockhart suggested just give our thoughts to staff and then come back?
So well, you can do that, or they'll send this out. We can then pull it and look through it, review with staff, review with council, and then come back.
There would be a column for Michelle, a column for Emily, Heather, James, Rachel, and then at our next meeting, we pull it up and we all can see very clearly where we're all at, have discussions on differences, and make this an hour instead of more than that.
Matt I'm ready to go. I know what I support and don't, but is there a time we have to deadline to approve this? Because
We intentionally moved this up to get it before the budget because you wanted to look at it before the budget. So there's not a tight deadline. The goal is to have these kind of finalized by next council meeting. But if it takes two, we can do that too.
can I ask the rest of us up here, do we have any intent of moving any of those bottom items back into the regular budget? I personally don't.
No.
The only one possibly might be Just for Kids, if it doesn't qualify.
Yeah, is there
That's the only one I want to really look at their grant go through.
That's true. I'd want to see any paperwork the city has between us and them, or the city and them.
Mayor, also, maybe this might be helpful too, if we move in that direction, maybe we could have some kind of parameters and guidelines. Where there's like 550,000 extra, do we want to say like, okay, maybe aim for 100, 200,000 that we might want to take from that, but also knowing that as we kind of progress through this, it's going to take some time for these organizations to probably adjust and for us to be able to help support them with other funding sources. Do we want to put a limit on that? Do we also want to, I don't know how everybody feels about the idea of focusing only on those who have a Lehi residence or Lehi address? Or do you just want to open it up and each council member doesn't really have perimeters and they know it could be anywhere from 600 to 1.1 million in allocations? Is there any guidelines we want to put?
Those are my guidelines that I'm going to respect that, but if you guys feel differently, and you can.
I would suggest not spending all of the reserves, especially as we're helping some organizations come out of the general fund. There might be benefit to have some of those reserves next year and things like that. So maybe we say half.
That's what I'm thinking too. Like if we're working with Hutchings, I would love to see what's being done with Hutchings, how they can be better supported and what's being done to help them become more sustainable. And maybe that's what we see from these organizations that are receiving large amounts of money, of having them do presentations, making sure that they have the right people and tools in place to be able to help them become that way. Because I know this has been talked about for years. So I want to be very careful with how we're cutting Hutchings if they're, but it does need to be this kind of gradual step with making sure that it's never to the point that they can't survive. So it's like, yeah.
Well, if we have a healthy debate on the rest of the recommendations, I like the vast majority of them. There's a few that I don't agree with, as far as the recommended funding amount for those. So I'm good to do whatever. I prefer not to prolong this more than, to, I think maybe next session, if possible, we can close this out. But I'm fine discussing, however.
I'm looking at the time. We've got some big things to discuss before a regular session, so I'm fine tabling it till next time. And having each of us send our opinions, or is that what you want?
It's fine with me. I can do however you want to look at it. If you want to do a quick working session next, but also vote on it in the regular session, if you want to do that, if you're okay with that, or if you want to vote on it the following one, either is fine. You just let me know, but I can send it out.
Yeah, I think my suggestion would be, maybe use the different columns for different council members where there's a disagreement, then we can discuss. And I think some of these we may all agree on, so it'll save time.
Councilmember Freeman, you had a thought? Or are you good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Let's get it done.
You good? Councilmember Stallings, you're good? Okay, so Matt, if you will put together that and send it to each of our council members, they can fill it out as to what they think. We can gather that data that way and then send that data back out, and we can have a discussion at the next city council meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. All right, our working discussion items. Item number 1, discussion of Thanksgiving Point Participation Agreement. Come on up. Welcome back.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Ryan Thomas with Stack Real Estate, and excited to be here to talk about our participation agreement. Just to recap where we left off in our last meeting, we heard loud and clear that this council does not want to entertain a development agreement. We were asked to come back with a vanilla, simple, no-frills participation agreement, and that's exactly what we did. What we captured in this agreement is everything that's been approved to date, from the HTRZ to the project details, and kept it as simple as possible. So I don't have much of a presentation. I have some slides if it's at all helpful as we talk through things, but I think maybe a question and answer format might be the most productive. So I'll hand it off and we can go from there.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Thomas?
Are we just going over the agreement? With the agreement, I just want to clarify, let's see, on item 4.7, it talks about new taxes.
Yes.
Basically, what I get from that is if there are property taxes raised citywide, it will also affect the HTRZ zone. Yes? My second sentence, it appears to say that.
Yeah, I might defer to the city attorney, Ryan Wood. Do you have any comment on that there? My understanding would be as taxes go up, the capture remains the same at 80%.
Okay.
That seems to be what the language says, is if Lehigh City raises property taxes, then that would also apply to the HTRZ.
Yeah.
Okay, and then on line item 655, it talks about early termination by participant. Then participant may at any time elect to terminate this agreement. So I'm just a little concerned that might leave us with an unfinished building.
Yeah, we wouldn't do that. I can't really see an event that would lead us to terminate this participation agreement here. We intend for it to run the full length of the HTRZ.
Yeah, the way I say that is it's an incentive, but it's not a guarantee that the project gets completed. So,
yeah. And I can expand on that if at all helpful. When we finance these projects with the bank, we'll have completion guarantees, personal guarantees, all that stuff. So there's many, many parties that will be involved in these projects being completed, us included.
Okay, keep going. 7.4.
Keep going.
It talks about, basically delaying time, extending time. Now you have 25 years to begin this project. You have 45 years to complete the project.
I would say the 25-year window are the phases. Mm-hmm. Those are tranches, phases, whatever nomenclature you'd like to use there. But the full HTRZ runs for 45 years. So phases, can start at the beginning, run for 25 years each, but we couldn't start a phase in year 40 and get 25 years out of it. We'd only get the 5 years because that is the full window of the HTRZ.
Okay, but you have 45 years where most of us will probably not be here anymore.
Right. Yeah.
I understand that there are things that are considered that would qualify to delay this and maybe need time. Things listed are war, insurrection, strikes, lockouts, riots, floods, acts of God, acts of public enemy, epidemics, things that we can't control, basically. And then there are things that we can remedy a little easier, like lack of transportation or labor, materials, or tools. Like maybe they're going to be more expensive, but to me, those aren't in the same category as acts of God. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is reminding me of some of these insurance things. No offense to Mayor Binns, but some things that I read, maybe I, buy a piece of furniture and it says we insure your furniture except for all these things, and then you think, well, then what's the point of the insurance? Because there's all these exceptions.
Sure.
So to me, I think we need to go through this a little bit more carefully. I don't consider maybe newly enacted government restrictions or lack of transportation equal to a war or riots. So basically from where it says lack of transportation and then inability to secure necessary labor, material, or tools, blah, 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 until entity, I would strike that.
Yeah, or can we connect those things to the beginning of the list? In other words, if the lack of transportation or those things are caused because of the prior list, are you comfortable with that? I mean, that's kind of the intent. This is typical force majeure language. This is a little bit more extensive than what I'm used to seeing, but yeah. I think that's the concern is like some of these things, out of our control. Some of them maybe not.
Sure.
Are we okay if we take the language and say, okay, as long as that second few things is tied to an event that happens in the first, that was an idea, something like that.
Yeah. I guess what I would say is we have been at this for a long time, and we want to develop this project. So I don't see too many delays. Market conditions, of course, will be a delay as, you know, the cyclical nature of real estate happens. But our HTRZ will be triggered as soon as we start our first phase. So we will be incentivized to move this thing along, of course. And this is our day job. We develop. So we will have every incentive to go out and build the project as well. So I don't see that as a big issue, but we're happy to look at it if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I just think that some of those things are, you know, you could tie them to or whatnot, but
Yeah.
I mean, lack of transportation, you have 45 years, so
Yeah.
I think you got it.
And I think the intent there was probably just if something happened and we didn't have access to the property, it's hard to lease it up if you can't get your residents in and out. So just very good point, kind of standard protections in there, much like an insurance document, I guess.
For the affordability housing aspect of this, how is that enforced when these are all rental units?
The actual mechanism, I think, would kind of be determined by the city. I know Goyo's involved with that as well, but we have to maintain that compliance or we don't get the tax increment. So that's fully understood that we have to maintain that and manage to that as well, right? The income restrictions, the rent restrictions, all of that, to get this incentive.
And what's that formula that Goyo and the state would, or the city would set forth?
It's determined by HUD. Kind of national HUD, they set it based off area median income, and whether that falls within Utah County, you know, what we know it as is 9% of our units will be at 80% AMI, 3% of the units will be at 60% AMI. And when we had this approved in 2023, the requirement for the legislation was only 10% of the units had to be at 80%. So we went above and beyond that with the 60% AMI as well, and spreading those out throughout the project. So there's not just one affordable housing project, it's spread throughout the community as well. However, that is governed from the city side. I mean, it's going to be Goyo involvement as well too, and the numbers will be determined by HUD publications that you can find online.
Yeah, that to me is, I think, needs to be defined, especially if we enter into this interlocal agreement. I know at least the standard or the methodology needs to be defined, because that, you know, if we sign it, then it kind of leaves it up to interpretation, and it may change as time goes along.
And I think in the agreement, the participation agreement, it does tie it to the units will need to be affordable as long as the participation agreement or increment is flowing through the project. So there are those restrictions, but if you're talking a formulaic approach, certainly we can address that as well too.
To build on that, council member, I think it may be similar, and you know, Jason helped me get there, but I think it's like the same way that we verify that businesses are paying the correct sales tax, right? They report to us the sales that they've had, and then I believe it's Dean that kind of goes through and makes sure, and his team make sure that that is reflective of the sales tax rate. So I'm guessing, but I agree with you. It'd be great if we put it into this. I guess that the same thing would happen. They would report to us what they've rented and what income, who's paying what, and then we would compare that to what would be expected, which is what we do for sales tax as well. So I don't think it's beyond.
Yeah.
Like, I think my concern is growing government to do this, but I think it's already a mechanism that we do when it comes to sales tax. That's me. Jason, does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's a reimbursement, so
Right.
we have to make sure that they're following the terms of the agreement before it's remitted back to them. So.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think it'd be great if we put something like that in there. It makes sense to me too.
Yeah, I guess just my very honest opinion, I think the entire HDRZ is bad for Lehi. I think this council is a very different council than that, than the one that approved it. But just speaking for myself, the HDRZ again was passed in 2023. I think it was 2018 when the units were approved, 1,800.
That's when the first conversations on this project started.
Yeah. So even without an HDRZ, you're fully entitled to build according to the zone. I think I need more time to dive into this agreement further. I think it's been a busy couple months with 4 new people up here. I would prefer to go through it in a little more detail to see how it can benefit the city more. This is not a very popular thing in the public's eyes. I don't think, when I think of affordable housing, I know rent does apply. I think it's far more effective if it's for purchase, but that's not what this development is. So my personal preference is that we table this. I'd like a lot more time with Ryan to go through this in more detail, line by line, to see what is required, what is optional, and how we can make it better for the city, since obviously the HTRZ is already approved.
Understood. The only thing I'd say is that is part of the reason we're here today, is to answer any questions you may have. So more than happy to workshop thoughts and ideas. I think we first came on February 9th or around there. We tried to get this into the city as quickly as we can here, and we don't plan to actually have a formal city council meeting till April 14th, I believe. So we do have some time, I think, between now and then. And of course, us as a team, Gardner, Stack, Thanksgiving Point, we're always more than happy to host anyone at our office for any, informal question and answer as well too. So I've thrown that out a few times. We're happy to do that.
Did you have more?
I have more.
For it, I'm next.
I just calculated what 60% of the AMI would be, and I could be wrong, but this is, I believe, if we're basing it on Lehi's, which has a higher area median income of about $120,000, it would approximately, we want to spend about, I think, 30% of that on housing per month. So that would be approximately $1,800 per month for 60% AMI, and that would be total costs, including mortgage, utilities, HOA, if those units are 60%, and then you do the same for.
And it gets, you're spot on.
Yeah.
You're headed down the right path. Where it gets a little complicated is it's based off how many occupants are in a unit, which is determined formulaically by HUD as well too. But you're right, utilities, rent, all those other income items, application fees are captured in that. And I think the number that we had been running with was slightly lower than that. But
Okay.
because I know there's some sticker shock when you hear that number, but
As
utilities are
affordable.
expensive as well too, and everything that's included in there. So I would expect it to be somewhat less than that.
Around there. Okay. One question I had is, I saw in the interlocal agreement that it said the maximum, it's 1A, taxing entities consent, page 2. It says the taxing entity's share payable to the agency shall not exceed $152,680,962. So, and according to the original agreement, which was in HRZ agreement meeting from November 13th, 2023, it said that it would be $122 million of tax increment, and that is $30 million and a little bit more than of that from 2 years ago. So I'm wondering where the extra $30 million is.
That number was from a projection provided by Piper Sandler, an investment bank that kind of looks into this from the bonding perspective. So they put all those projections together. That was part of our original submission to GOYO, reviewed by Zion's Public Finance as well, to make sure everything was in line with expectations. The $152 million number was the total increment produced from the project. So that is where that became the cap there. As far as why has that changed, maybe it's an interpretation between how it was interpreted then and then now. And of course, there's always growth rates as well too with assessed values. And,
So you're saying the
Great.
values increase?
Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry.
I just wanted to ask a question about that. So to clarify, the cap has increased since your HTRZ proposal was approved?
there was no cap implemented at our approval. There was just a projection put together by Piper Sandler. And I have the approval, and I think we included that with our submission to the city as an attachment. There was no cap approved. It was 80% of all of the increment generated within the HTRZ.
Anyone else? Jump in.
Sorry, just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Are you,
You're done?
You can keep going.
Okay, I got a lot of questions. Some of these are for staff. Ryan, are you well versed in this agreement? And okay, so some of my concerns is that it talks about additional land, that they can add additional land, but if that wasn't in the HDRZ proposal that was approved, can they do that, and how does that affect the number of affordable housing units they're required to have?
Yeah, Marlon and I had this conversation. Where is Marlon? Oh, that's fantastic.
You're on your own.
'Cause I'm trying to remember that I thought that the additional land was still within the originally approved, but you don't necessarily own it all or something like that. But it wouldn't be additional land approved outside the original boundaries that were part of the application.
And just to add a little color to that, we would have to amend our HTRZ. And again, the HTRZ comes from Lehi City. So we would have to come to you, the council, and say, hey, we want to amend our HTRZ to expand the footprint of it to capture this parcel here. You would then have to approve that and then allow us to resubmit or submit yourselves with our support to GoYo to amend the HTRZ. So I would say you control the keys to that decision.
Well, then I'd like language in this agreement to clarify that it would have to go through amendment process.
Happy to add that. I think it, that's
It's
the
there already?
process. Is what I would say.
Again, if it's spelled out, it's usually better.
Sure.
My experience. Okay, so amend that. And you're not limited to the 3 phases with the new legislation.
Correct.
Just the 45 years. And then, Ryan, looking at some of the other HTRZ agreements, some cities have like reporting requirements or monitoring requirements. As I understand it, the tax increment is supposed to go to specific purposes like the parking infrastructure and I may be wrong, but the electric infrastructure, the power infrastructure as well.
Mm-hmm.
How do we make sure that that's where the money goes, that it's being built and that sort of thing?
I think what the legislation says, especially with the new edits, but what we were approved under was it can go towards income-targeted housing costs, structured parking, enhanced development costs, and then horizontal, vertical construction costs and property acquisition.
Okay, that's right. I remember the vertical.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are what I would say is pretty all-encompassing what it takes to build these projects here. I know we've always intended the majority of this money will go to structured parking and then fall well short of covering all of that because every structured parking stall is about $25,000 to $30,000.
So it would go to the structured parking?
That was the original intent with the money there. But I think when you wrap in vertical construction costs, horizontal construction costs for power infrastructure upgrades as well, it's kind of all encompassing. And I think we need that ability like the legislation
Right, but I just want to
allows.
make sure that parking structure is built and that it's not used for other things.
Yeah.
And again, there's new legislation, but as far as I know, or as I understand it, we're supposed to enter into this agreement to make sure that to implement the approved proposal. So I'm just wondering, it might be helpful if Marlon was here, that we can get some language in there that commits them to those
again,
things.
because it's reimbursement, right? Like the county collects the taxes, it'll come to the RDA, or the city, then to the RDA, but there'll be a verification. Like they'll have to submit invoices
To whom?
to the
county?
RDA,
Okay.
right, in order for the expenses to be reimbursed. So
Okay.
I don't know the exact mechanism. I don't know who on the city side will do that, but because that's the nature of the transaction, that they don't get the money and then go spend it. They spend the money and then get reimbursed. That there'll be an invoice verification process before we cut them a check.
Okay. Is there any way that we can make sure that the money goes towards a parking structure? Because
We just wouldn't reimburse.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that the agreement limits it to that, right? There's a list of expenses that are allowed by the statute, and so we haven't negotiated an agreement that says you must spend it on just this one thing. It's any of those expenses that are allowed to be reimbursed by the
by statute or by the proposal that they got approved?
By the statute.
Yeah, I don't know if that's different, but my understanding is by the statute, but I haven't read the proposal.
Okay, that's something I'd like to look into.
I can pull it up here if it's at all helpful to see.
One thing that, as you guys review this, because it sounds like you're going to spend some time to do that, what would be really helpful is if you're very familiar with the HTRZ legislation and the approval. Because what you told us last time was, I don't want to approve anything more
or less than was already approved. And we've done our darndest to make sure that this is like right in line with the statute and the approval. So if there's things that you guys bring to the table and say, here's the statute and here's your approval and this is different than that, that's what we absolutely want to know so that we can fix that for you.
Well, and I said at the last meeting, I want to hold you to what is and was approved in the HDRZ proposal, because you promised some things. There were trail connections, there was certain square footage of commercial and that sort of thing. That's what you presented to the state committee. That's what got approved, and that's what we're beholden to, even though we'd rather not do this whole mess. I'd rather have that tax money go to our school district. So we need to make sure that you're getting a lot of money from this. We need to make sure that you are held to that agreement, what you presented to them. So that's where I'm at. There's a lot of language in here about the area plan, but I would like to see reference back to what was approved in your HTRZ proposal. Let's see if I have more. There's a few other things. Yeah, that's my main point. That's my main concern.
I just want to say thank you for taking out the PID.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate that. And I think that's made this a lot more easy for myself. At least I can speak for myself in saying I appreciate that is not in there. And just want to clarify for the public, those listening, that is not part of this agreement any longer. So thank you for doing that.
Yep.
Any other questions or council here?
I have one more question for staff. If we have some changes we'd like to see, would we work with Marlon on that, or you? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so go ahead.
That was going to be our next question, is steps forward from here, as it sounds like we need to get changes that the council has funneled to you and then to us so that we can review this.
So what we'll do is we'll send our questions and concerns to Mr. Wood and Mr. Eldridge, and then they'll be in contact with you, and then they'll work through the contract period, and then read back, and then they'll get copies of them. We'll go from there.
And do you guys have a time frame that you can commit to on getting comments to staff so that we can set expectations on our side?
I would like to vote on this on the April meeting. This has been a 2-year process and multiple councils for them to deal with. What I see, I'm so grateful for the call outs today. I think those are things we can implement. But my major concerns have been addressed with a situation I may not be happy with but have to live with due to another council's decision. And so out of respect to the applicant who has spent years now trying to get here, I would like us to put this on the April agenda and move forward and allow them to develop their land.
And just to clarify, staff and the developers were working on this for years, but it's just recently come to the city council for our input. So I understand you want to get moving on this, and we do have a deadline, I guess. If we don't get it done, then we'll have to report to the state and explain why. So I'm okay moving forward with it, but I think the council ought to have some input. This is kind of a huge thing. So it's sometimes worth taking time for that.
Yeah, and in no way, shape, or form did I say the council shouldn't have input. I actually extended an appreciation for the thoughts given, and I hope that you continue to give your thoughts to staff. But these applicants have been through a lot, and they've been respectful and met this council's needs of removing the PID and things. And so it's time to get out of the way and remove the red tape and do continue to provide feedback, but let's allow them to develop the land now.
So let me interject. That gives us 3 weeks. So our next meeting would be April 14th, which gives us 3 weeks. Is that correct, Tisha? Council, are you okay with, go ahead, Councilmember Harrison.
I mean, if I feel comfortable with it, great.
Yeah.
If I don't, and it comes before the council for a vote, I will vote a hard no.
Right.
So,
Councilmember Newell, you're okay we'll do some homework here in the next 3 weeks with Marlon and Mr. Wood and head down that road. Okay. Councilmember Freeman, you're good there?
Sure. Can I ask another question?
Yep.
Okay. For the soccer agreement, page 4, when it talks about, and J, what is that? I don't even know. J, 4.1 J. It talks about 3 tax increment collection periods, but then it says that they're not applicable. Can you explain that to me?
That just has to do with when our legislation was approved in 2023, and the latest amendments to that legislation lock in your approval to the legislation at the time it was approved. So there was no cap on phases at that time. So that's how this one would be governed.
Okay, there was no cap on phases at the time, but now there is cap on phases?
I believe so, yes.
3. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, just looking at April, we'll have a meeting on April 14th. We'll also have a meeting on April 28th. So we'll work towards those dates. I'm sure someone will be in contact with you as we move forward. So we appreciate your coming tonight and walking through this, answering our questions, and we'll definitely be in contact as we move forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Okay, item 2, discussion of proposal to conduct a feasible study for an ice center. I know Marlon was going to do this.
He had to step out, so I don't know if the council wants to have a discussion.
Yes.
Or we can push it off until the work session, or, I don't know, something in between.
I think we can discuss.
Okay.
It's open for discussion.
How long do we have?
We have time. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're good.
All right. I mean, personally, I love the idea of an ice rink. I know my kids do. I am a relatively new fan of hockey. I think it'd be incredible, personally. I think it'd be a value add to the community. However, with that said, I have some concerns that would prevent me from even supporting a feasibility study. The first is, based on my own research, based on the research of several of us up here, several residents in Lehi who have also helped research this, I think profitability is very, very rare for ice rinks. Even in areas in the north, in Minnesota, Michigan, Vermont, most of them are still subsidized. And I think the only possible way to even have a chance at being profitable would be a very, very large facility. 3 ice rinks plus extra multi-use space. And I don't know if we're in a position right now with $100 million in bond debt to commit to something like that when we have other priorities, like our Legacy Center, like our parks. We have promised parks like Miller Roads that are not yet complete, because a lot of those funds had to be used for another park. The second thing I'm concerned about is, if this is profitable, if we're very confident that it would be profitable, why doesn't a private organization do it? I think private organizations run on what's profitable, what brings in revenue, and I would love to see a private organization run something like this, and I think the city could go above and beyond in supporting a private organization that would build this. I know the county is pushing very hard on it, and the county has every right to build it themselves and fund it themselves, and they're not doing that. They're choosing not to, likely because it won't make money. And personally, as a conservative person myself, I am very careful about how much we overextend and use taxpayer money. Things like the Legacy Center, they benefit the entire community. Parks benefit the entire community. This would benefit parts of the community, but not the entire community. And I get, it could boost economic development around hotels. Hotel tax is great revenue for the city. But with that said, it's still theoretical. And the last thing directly related to this item is that this feasibility study is by Babcock Design. They are not economists. They're not telling us if this is going to make sense from a government-run perspective, right? It's a design company that has a very specific interest in seeing this approved so that they can potentially get a contract to design it. These are not economists. I would trust a PhD candidate in at BYU or the U to go through this and see it from a much less biased perspective. I think even with, if I can find it, within their letter to Marlin, Babcock Design, in the first paragraph, it's praising Utah Mammoth. NHL franchise hockey is growing at unprecedented rates. With this growth, the demand for public ice rinks is also very high, and there's a significant shortage of ice rinks. Like right there off the bat, it's not an unbiased study. I would not feel comfortable spending $33,000 on a study that is already designed to tell us to put in an ice rink and use data, selectively use data to do that. So again, like for the study itself, I disagree that this would even be a comprehensive, unbiased study to tell us if it's worth it. And beyond that, I don't think it's our role at this position, at this period of time in Lehi, to fund something like this through bonding. Those are my thoughts.
Other thoughts on a feasibility study?
You know me, I like data, I like information to make good decisions, but I also think that for many of us, this is our first budget season, and I would really like to get through that with all of the asks that we have before even considering extending ourselves for something else, especially the research I've done. Like, again, I know Marlon sent out some research he had done, some other things that it would be difficult to have it be profitable, and I am concerned about getting a bond and basically in other people's names, in our taxpayers' names, for potentially, tens of millions of dollars. It talks about how we would most likely need to look at land purchasing also and things like that. And I just don't think it's appropriate time. I don't feel comfortable with it as a new council member with my lack of experience with doing our just general budget and seeing the needs there. I know that when I was elected based on my fiscal conservative. I can't even say it. On being conservative in all the ways, including fiscally. And there has been criticisms of some of the purchases and buildings and things like that the city has made recently, and those are things like the city hall. I mean, we're talking about something like that versus an ice rink. So for me, I don't think it's appropriate at this time.
I'm of the mind I want data. I don't know if it is a good thing. I don't know if it isn't. It's just all opinions that I'm hearing now. So, it's hard when there's 7 to 12 million out there towards this. A lot of partners that could come forward. I just don't know what I don't know. So that's where I would seek data. When we went through the school district split, we sought a lot of data to be able to make a good decision on this. I don't think I'd be in that same position if there wasn't partners already there before there's even a feasibility study. Maybe it goes to another city, maybe another city benefits from it, and maybe some council members are okay with that. But I do think that this is something where if we, I don't want to get it wrong. I don't have the information that I need to make a good decision on that. And also just to speak, like with Babcock Design, I wish Marlon was here because I think he can speak a lot better than any of us can to this. They're doing the design, but they also have consultants that would be outsourced for doing the things that they're not experts in. When it comes to the economic analysis, I'd also want to know the profit loss statement on it. There's a lot of information I would want to know from it. But yeah, I want to operate from a place of good data from reliable export sources to be able to make good decisions for Lehi.
Councilmember Stallings.
Yeah, I kind of said how I feel about this whole thing last meeting, but I do want to point out this fee proposal that we're, asked to look at and sign. It's more about designing an ice skating complex rather than looking at the economic feasibility of it. It's not. I look at what it's proposing to offer us. Floor plans, elevations, overall site plans. They're offering to come to city council meetings and sell it to the public, kind of thing. So I think this is more about designing a product rather than looking at really if it's feasible economically and financially for the city. So I am concerned. It was presented to us as a feasibility study and as a way to get that data, but looking at what this actually is, it's not that. I don't think we would get data from them, and as Councilmember Harrison pointed out, is certainly not unbiased data. So whoever they hire as a consultant, I'm sure, would have a very subjective opinion. Yeah, I don't like this. If we want true data, then we need to get financial advisors, not architects and interior designers. The other thing is promises of revenue flowing into the general fund. I did a lot of research on if this actually works. I looked here in Utah. I looked at the ones that Marlon presented to us, especially the ones that, had a profit of a couple million. Very rare. Never. Not one of them did that revenue, the profit, go to the general fund. It was, they were operated as enterprise funds. They stayed within the facility. It went back. The profit that was generated went back into capital improvements. So, which is probably why they're successful, to be honest. I don't like these promises on return of investment because I'm not seeing that happen. I would be happy if it broke even, but a lot of them don't even do that. So again, as was pointed out, I also ran as being fiscally conservative. I believe we need to be responsible with taxpayers' money. As I sit through the budget discussions and hear all the needs throughout the departments in the city, there's no way I could support this. We've got parks we need to finish, parks we need to even start. We took on a county park that we need to put a lot of money towards. We have our first responders who need competitive wages. We need to staff our police department. Our fleet is getting older. There are things in the city that are so old that we don't have replacement parts for them. So to me, just going down this road with the lure of promises of profits, it's probably not a wise decision. Let's take care of the needs we have now before we venture into something like this.
Councilmember Lockhart.
Okay, bear with me. As I spoke with residents, I committed to asking some questions. And so I'm going to go through some of that and respect to the commitment I made to the residents today on this item. I want to make sure that they know I heard them and asked the questions they asked me to ask. Unfortunately, Marlon isn't here, but I did speak with him prior to this meeting and got some of these questions answered. So when it comes to the design company, building a facility like this, like Councilmember Harrison mentioned, really could be successful at a large scale. My understanding is that the reason why the design company is involved is to offer us costs at a different type of scale. How could we possibly even talk about economic impact if we haven't talked about the cost of these facilities at different sizes? So for a feasibility study to be accurate, not only do we need the economic impact, but components of that economic impact are the scale and design of these facilities. This particular company just recently did the South Jordan SEG facility. So not only do they have costs, but they have costs in Utah within the last 12 months. So they would be providing us the most accurate information of cost, which then allows us to have the greater economic opportunity or not so much opportunity conversation. But if you don't have the design components, we wouldn't know the costs. And so I think it is a false argument to say that we can't have a design company get involved when we wouldn't know what to even, we can't talk about costs without design. They're married. I also know that they are partnering with other entities to fill the gaps if they can't give us the economic studies. And I'm sure there's, we could maybe ask for an economist with a PhD to be involved. But that would be, our prerogative as the council. A lot of you guys, I don't think the public even knows, but I was actually involved in the initial conversations over the school district split. I was in those initial meetings. I actually called them and got the councils together, pieces of the councils together. And we did not choose an option that was presented to us in those studies. In fact, all the councils got that data and did something that wasn't even recommended. What did the feasibility study provide? A launching point, a conversation piece, something to come around and talk about. But it was not an excuse to stop the work. I believe that this feasibility study would be a launching point into more conversations, more analysis, and critical thinking. It wouldn't stop at what they tell us would work. Instead, we would do it the Lehi way, and we would get to work. We would pioneer a way that was successful. I believe we can. And even if we couldn't, I would love to be able to go to the residents and say, this is why we couldn't. But instead, when the residents who have expressed interest in this come and ask us, why don't we know these answers? I have to say, because this council wouldn't even ask the questions. And that's frustrating. So another question I have, and I want to be very clear, I do not think that using RDA funds for economic opportunities is fiscally irresponsible. And I take issue with this concept that anyone who would think of using funds that are designated and restricted this way appropriately is therefore fiscally irresponsible. I am fiscally responsible. And a part of that fiscal responsibility is to diversify the type of revenue that Lehi City is getting. Or what will happen is my residents will see a drastic increase in property taxes because we won't be able to meet the needs due to inflation and the demand on services. And I do not want to see that happening. So it is fiscally responsible of this council to look for opportunities and ways to find more options for revenue. I prefer the sales tax revenue because it is use-based. Property taxes you can't opt out of. Sales tax you can. If you don't want to participate in the Whole Foods RDA, don't shop there. If you don't want to participate in the ice rink, don't go. But if we can't, we won't be able to offer them anything if we don't know the answers to these questions. And we are accountable to them to know these answers, and we have a mechanism of getting there. But I won't be able to give those answers to my residents, and that's frustrating. Ultimately, I think every resident in Lehi wants us to make data-driven decisions, not sit in a place of principles, but instead apply our principles with data and make the right decisions. I'm frustrated that I can't get the data that would be used as a launching pad for more conversations. This data we could take to private organizations and ask for help. Hey, this is what it says. What is your private area expertise, and what do you think? Could you contribute? We have no idea where this could go. And guess what? We never will, because the council's decided not to ask the questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Lockhart. I think at this point in time, we have a majority that is not willing to move forward on the feasibility study at this time. My recommendation, and I would look for some head nods up here, is that we put this on the shelf for a time until a later date to discuss, and that may be years from now, which is okay. But I'm looking at those of you. I know 2 of you would probably be a yes. I know 3 of you are rather a no. So I think at this point in time, we have a majority that we won't seek the feasibility study at this point in time. So if everybody's, based on what I know and what I've heard, I think that's the road we'll move down. Okay, discussion of updates to the Power Standards Manual. Brent? Welcome.
Thank you. Again, my name is Brent Thomas with the Power Department. And thank you for taking a minute to review this. And we are looking to update the power standards specifically related to power quality and customer-owned equipment. This is an effort to clarify the customer's responsibility with protection of their own equipment versus the city's responsibility. In the last year or so, we've had several claims of damages to electronic equipment in their homes that falls under the responsibility of the homeowner or the customer. And we were in an attempt to try and clarify that. That's what the update to this standard is. This follows the update from 2020 in the National Electric Code that required surge protection for homes, and then again they expanded that in 2023 for surge protection for all occupancies, and so this is just us expanding our standard to encompass that and to clarify it for homeowners. It also includes an update for single phase protection, which doesn't apply to homeowners. It's only for three-phase customers, which usually applies to commercial customers. So that is the kind of the summary of what we're trying to accomplish with this, to not only clarify what is the responsibility of the customer, but to also limit the liability of the city under normal operating procedures in a power system. So, any questions with that?
Any questions for Brent from the council? Looks like we're good, okay. Brent. Looks like you answered all the questions.
Thank you.
Trust you.
Thank you. Kim, item 4 is the discussion of mixed-use zoning requirements. I believe you're leading that discussion. In a spirit of time and a bio break and a closed session that we need to hold here real quick, would you be opposed if we added that to the end of our city council meeting?
No, not at all. Happy to do that. Yep, we can postpone it, and if the meeting goes late, we can put it on the next meeting. Whatever there's no urgency on our part. I think it was just something that...
Council, would you be okay if we move that to the back side of the council meeting?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, any questions on the council meeting tonight? There's currently 4 items, now 5, but any questions on those?
We're just talking about the regular agenda items, right?
Yep, regular agenda items that'll be on the agenda this evening.
I'll have questions that come up as we go along.
Awesome. Okay, we'll do an administrative report. Jason, anything on the administrative report? Mayor and council reports. Any reports from the council that you want to report?
What are you looking at me for?
We naturally just look right. I'm going to start
I'll start. Yeah, we can start over here. Some of us had the opportunity to go out to Washington, D.C. The youth group went also. I'm strange, and I enjoy those kind of things and listening to federal legislation. Especially excited about the Basics Act, where they're proposing a federal transportation money could come directly to MPOs and not through the state. So I don't know if it'll pass, but that I think might benefit us in some ways, and some other good legislation federally. Always fun to take tours of the Capitol and that sort of thing.
I guess I'm to the left as well.
Yep, you're good. Go ahead.
Well, Councilmember Freeman and I don't want to steal your thunder, but we had the opportunity while you guys were in D.C. to attend the 2100 North Freeway groundbreaking, and I was told that I was the most excited about that road of anyone who was there. So anyway,
she was in the excavator or whatever you call it.
Yes,
first.
I think I got the 3rd and 4th scoop. I wasn't first, but anyway, no, we are so excited, and huge thank you to UDOT and all of those who sacrificed, including our staff, and and everyone who made that road possible. And so anyway, it was a really fun opportunity, and I'm glad we were there.
Councilmember Freeman?
All right. Going this way.
I'm making Councilmember Newell last.
Oh, okay. Okay. Nothing to report from my committees. 2100 North, groundbreaking was wonderful, and I am grateful I was there, able to listen to a lot of people, of our legislators speak, and I was able also to do a little training with the police, which you guys missed, with trying to be a SWAT team lead, which was quite the experience. So I hear there's a video about it. I'm looking forward to it.
Just to piggyback on what Councilmember Stalling said, the DC trip was, we had a few reasons for it. The National League of Cities conference, that was very useful. Sometimes we try to recreate the wheel, thinking that we live in a vacuum, but it's interesting to hear what other cities are doing, what they're concerned about, and it's very strange to see, people on the far left end of the spectrum politically, all the way to the far right, all applaud Rand Paul as he gives a speech about local control and federalism. So that was very insightful and interesting. And then, of course, meeting with our lawmakers and pushing things that are important to the region. I saw Mayor Binns support Mayor Karn out in Saratoga Springs, helping them promote their legislation to get a post office, which literally requires an act of Congress to get a post office, which helps them, it helps us, it helps Main Street traffic stay a little better. And so that was a great experience. And then, what were you going to mention? I don't want to steal your thunder.
Oh, I can mention if you want, yeah. Whatever you do.
Fire.
Whatever you want to do. Oh, fire?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the unveiling, I forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
Heather can take that.
You do it, James.
But we had the honor of going to the fire department awards banquet last week, which was really cool to see. So many incredible first responders in that room. Chief Kraft is a world-class leader. I think we have a lot to learn from him and how he leads his department. So hopefully we can support his department in the same way he supports the residents of the city. And also a shout out to our neighboring cities who filled in all of our fire stations to allow our firefighters to be in that banquet with their spouses and significant others. So thank you, Chief Kraft, for hosting that.
Yeah, really busy week. I thought it was really cool that Chief said that was the first time you've had all council members and mayor attend. So it was awesome that our schedules all lined up, that we could be there and just let you know how much we appreciate you. And it was amazing to be there and hear those who had won awards and and their service. So that was really special. I think we've just had a really busy, fun week. I love DC and being able to get to know more of the council and mayor on more of like a personal level too, instead of sitting behind here all the time. It was amazing to be out there with the youth council. We have incredible youth. I was with the youth council during the tour of the Capitol, and that was fun. Although I heard that being with Congressman Kennedy is the way to be, because he just pushes buttons and goes wherever he wants. So I'm just like, I need to make sure that happens. But Senator Curtis said he wanted to take the youth council, so I thought I better stick with them. We did the Relief Society Hall unveiling on Saturday, and Sister Eubanks was there to speak, and she was incredible. It was a really special event to have her there. I love seeing these community events. There was like 125 people that came to this. It seems to just be growing more and more, and the Historical Society continues to receive praise from all sources, talking about that no one west of the Mississippi is doing what our Lehi Historical Society is doing, that they are the model. And so I think that's just an amazing thing for us to be able to have them here in our city and be able to benefit from what they're doing. But yeah, it's been a great week.
Thanks. Just one thing to add. Chief Kraft sent me an email today. Our fire department was founded February 28th of 1901. So they are officially 125. We have passed that information on. We are working on a future resolution that will be put forth in a future meeting in the next one or two, Chief Kraft, as I text you today. So that is now being worked on, but I think it's important that we celebrate 125 years of Lehi Fire. It's been a busy couple weeks. It's been awesome, and there's a lot going on in Lehi with everything that's happening. So the other thing that's happened is we have a permit to occupy the building next to us. I know staff is already working on some dates for a future open house, and also potentially, let me lay hard on that word, potentially, this could be our last meeting in this room of this style. So interesting, as I've thought about that this week, I thought, boy, if those walls could talk, what would they tell me? And I'm sure I'd have to sit down with a pen and paper to listen to what the walls would tell me. But there's been a lot of great things that have happened in this room. And so as you exit tonight after our city council meeting, remember that potentially this is the last city council meeting that will be held here. And the history and the things that have happened in here are remarkable. When you look at how city government runs, the remarkable nature of what happens. So thank you. I would consider a motion to enter into a closed session for a specific purpose allowed under the Open and Public Meetings Act, Utah Code 52-4-205, including to discuss the purpose of lease or sale of real property.
So moved.
I have a first by Councilmember Stallings.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Harrison. Any questions on that motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. We'll go to closed session. Held here at Lehi City Hall in the council chambers at 7 p.m. We recognize our full council tonight: Councilmember Newell, Councilmember Harrison, Councilmember Freeman, Councilmember Stallings, Councilmember Lockhart. We appreciate that they're here and that we have a full council tonight. And we welcome each of you, and we're glad that you're here. First, we'll start. We ask all to rise as we participate in the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Harrison will lead us in that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Harrison. Okay, I don't believe we have any presentations or reports tonight, and so we'll get through there. So we'll first start off tonight with citizen input, and let me maybe give you some ground rules for citizen input. If you look at our agenda or you look online at the agenda and the item that you came to speak about is not on the agenda, we're going to open it up for public comment. You have 3 minutes. We yield you each 3 minutes to speak what's on your mind and what's going on. We would invite you that when you do come to the microphone that you would state your name, that we do have your name. At the end of the 3 minutes, you'll see a red light go off. If you'll finish your comments when that red light goes off at the buzzer, that would help us. If you don't, then we will help you end your comment. But we like to do it in a professional way. So you will have a light. You will have. You'll kind of know that 3 minutes is there, and we appreciate that. So with that, at 7:13, we open the microphone for public comment.
Hi there, my name is Eileen Miller. I'm with the Utah Valley Home Builders and the Parade of Homes. And I came to distribute the list of the Parade of Homes this year. We've had to limit it to 40 homes because we had more homes that wanted to participate in the parade than we have space for. The parade will be from the 4th of June to the 20th of June. And just wanted to invite everybody to be there. I have a list of the homes, the addresses, and the towns that they're in. And we have a couple of very expensive homes this year. One of them is near $40 million. So it's a record for the price of a home. We had one home last year that was a $20 million remodel that was in the parade. So anyway, just thought I would let you all know, invite you all to come and share a wonderful time with us at the Parade of Homes this year. Thanks for having me. I'll give this to the planning director, and maybe he can pass them around.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Good to see you.
Thank you very much.
I don't have a copy of the agenda, but I was told that one of the topics is the Willow Park Pond over by the Willow Park, or the whatever it's called, Willow Creek Pond, over by the Jordan River. Is that in discussion tonight?
No, so you can go ahead and make comment. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So my wife and I live right on the pond.
Give us your name.
Glenn Rimkus.
Thank you.
And we live right on the pond. We're in one of those houses that's on the east side of the pond. We lived there for 8 years. I understand you're proposing a paved walkway around the pond, or a blacktop walkway around the pond. There's already a road around the pond that's road. It's compacted gravel. It's road based. Okay, it's very smooth. I'm here to argue against spending money for that paved thing that has been proposed, because I think that Lehi should have pockets that maintain the rural feel of what Lehi used to look like. And I don't see why Lehi, like every open space in Lehi, has to be developed into what looks like a overdeveloped inner city park. I think that would ruin the whole rural feel of it, okay? So I'm just here to point that out. I think it's so smooth. My wife walks our grandkids around it in a double stroller, and it's perfectly smooth. You don't need a blacktop roadway around that thing. I think it'd be much smarter to spend that money on planting some trees where they were ripped out years ago, and just trying to beautify that pond, maybe get rid of some of the phragmites that are growing completely around the shore of that pond, because that pond used to be beautiful, and it's not anymore. And as long as we're talking about the pond, a year or two ago, you guys or someone started putting catfish in that pond. Like a truck full of catfish from Arkansas came. That destroyed the fishery in that pond. It destroyed it. About 6 years ago, they trucked wild bass and bluegill from Steinecker Reservoir and put them in that pond. And they spawn, and they lay eggs. And there used to be fantastic bluegill and bass fishing in there. The catfish are bottom feeders. Well, they feed all over, but they are bottom feeders. They eat all the eggs of the bluegills and the bass. I don't think there's a single bluegill left in that pond. And the kids used to love to catch bluegills and bass. I haven't seen a bass in a while either. But there are no bluegills left. Between the pelicans that come and the catfish that eat the eggs, there's none left. So please, who's ever ordering these catfish, can you stop and just, like, even if it's a Utah DWR, you can tell them no, because you're Lehi City. You can say, we don't want those. Please, we don't want those. There's catfish in the Jordan River right next to it. There's catfish in Utah Lake. The Jordan River catfish get 3 feet long, and the kids know how to catch them, okay? So I'm just here to say that. I wish Lehi City could do some things to beautify that pond instead of just making it look worse, which it has over the 8.5 years we lived there. Sorry if I sound a little sour about this, but we've watched it all happen. We've watched drug busts happen back at that pond. We've called police on what we think is a drug deal going down, and it was. So, and my wife and I are the only ones who pick up litter around that pond also. We love it. We spent $30,000 more for that lot because it's on the pond, and we love it. But please, consider what I've said, if you would. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for coming to talk. We appreciate it. So no salty. You're good.
Okay. Thank you.
My name is Susie Rimkus. That is my husband, not my mother, my husband. I'm nervous with this microphone. So he introduced us. we do pick it up delivery, and we are more than glad to do that. We are so glad doesn't have a bathroom on a pond, doesn't have a trash can there, because that would be more work for us to remove the trash and put it out. And most people don't put in the trash. They just put there. But we're okay. We clean. We have pelicans there. We have, how many varieties of ducks we have, Glenn? 14 pelicans. We have some fish that eat the, I don't know, has a bunch of things that, and we just love looking there. I just want to I want to say thank you to Lehi City. They are always so nice to me. I go there with my 2 grandchildren, pushing them, and they are collecting the fishing lines because those are very hard for my fingers and my husband. They remove that, and they have put some things in the fragments, but they are coming back, so they need to keep doing that. So that's all. The catfish is a problem. But that's okay. Here at that, I have one thing that I want to tell you. The pond liner fabric is visible in a lot of places. When it used to be closed, the liner, the fabric, come all the way up, and we have big rocks to keep it in. As you know, if you go around, it's all vandalized. The kids, adults, and others, adolescents, they throw those big rocks inside the pond, so you can see all that line going down. So if you could collect from the pond and put the rocks, I don't do that because it's too heavy and can be slim to me too. I had 3 falls there doing that. Or just buy new ones and put there. But I think overall we are doing okay, except for that catfish and maybe some trees. I would like to see the trees back. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, it appears there's no other comments, so I'll close the public comment at 7:20 and bring it back to the dais. We'll move on to item 10, the consent agenda. Any questions on the consent agenda?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could clarify, we could clarify what the fleet items were for. What that meant, fleet surplus, is that ones that we don't need? Is that surplus? Is that ones that we need to buy? Is that, and what are these for?
Surplusing old vehicles, so they no longer have usefulness to us, so we put them to auction, but they have to be voted on by the council.
Yeah, so above a certain value, any personal property that the city wants to get rid of, you have to declare as surplus before we can sell it or give it away or auction it off or anything like that.
Mayor, were there some items removed from the agenda that were in the consent agenda?
Yeah, so in an email earlier, there were item number 3 and item number 5, and item number 1 were all removed. Any other questions, Councilmember Stallings? Okay.
Okay, I did have a question on number 5. If it's been removed from the consent agenda, but I believe the start date is for April 1st of this year, is that gonna cause a problem? Are we just pushing back the start date?
I think Cameron had to leave, but I think earlier he said it now wasn't until April 20th anyway.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that wasn't going to cause an operational issue. Thank you.
Any other questions to the consent agenda? I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda, removing items 1, 3, and 5 as presented.
Do I have a second?
I can second that.
I have a second from Councilmember Lockhart. Any questions on that motion? So we'll take a vote. We'll start with you, Councilmember Newell.
Yes.
Councilmember Harrison.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman.
Yes.
Councilmember Stallings.
Yes.
Councilmember Lockhart.
Yes.
Okay, that approves. Thank you very much. Okay, moving to the regular agenda, we'll start with item 1. Consideration of ordinance 10-2026, approving a development code amendment adding Chapter 12-D flood damage prevention in compliance with FEMA. Kim, I believe. Kim, is this your item or was? Come on, yeah. Go ahead and tell us who you are and walk through this.
Yes, my name is Shelby Brewer, and I'm the Stormwater Management Plan Engineer for Lehi City. And this is a flood ordinance that we're required to implement from FEMA because Lehi City is a member of the National Flood Insurance Program. And because we follow FEMA's minimum standards, residents within Lehi City are able to purchase flood insurance. And FEMA recently did a new flood study on both the Provo River and Utah Lake. And they remapped it using a new mapping method, which changed it to a flood zone V, which required us to update our ordinance to implement that. So that is what this ordinance is doing. It's meeting FEMA's minimum standards to keep Lehi in good standing with the National Flood Insurance Program.
So with that, we'll open it up. Is there anyone in the audience who is here to speak to this? Okay, no, so we'll close public comment. We'll bring it back to the dais. Any questions on this? Happy to entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve ordinance number 10-2026, a development code amendment adding chapter 12-D flood damage prevention in compliance with FEMA.
So I have a motion from Councilmember Harrison. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Councilmember Freeman with a second. Any questions on this motion? Councilmember Harrison, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman?
Yes.
Councilmember Stallings?
Yes.
Councilmember Lockhart?
Yes.
Councilmember Newell?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll go to item 3, consideration of ordinance 12-2026, approving the Vivian Estates Phase 5 zone change on 11.58 acres, located at approximately 2125 north, 600 east, changing the zoning from TH5, transitional holding, to RA1 residential / agriculture. Is there anyone here from?
Wait, hold on, sorry. Mayor, I think we're skipping an item. Did I print the wrong?
No, we skipped 2, but you could come back.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I did skip 2, didn't I?
One.
Excuse, thank you.
Sorry.
I was excited about 3. All right, well. Just tap me on the shoulder at this point next time. Just kidding. All right, never mind. We're going to start with, we'll go back to item number 2. Thank you. Consideration of ordinance 11-2026, approving a development code amendment to chapter 27, removing the exception for a maximum setback if there's a module of parking allowed. Kim, are you going to speak to this?
Yes, yeah.
I almost skipped you. I apologize.
Oh, no, that's okay. I don't mind. So this, we're trying to clean up what we've noticed is an ongoing exception that's needed. So we have certain design standard districts, and they have requirements for setbacks and whether or not parking is allowed in front of the building or not. So in these 2 districts that we're proposing to amend tonight, they do allow for certain uses, like probably the best example is an office warehouse building where we do allow parking between the street and the building, but then there's still this maximum setback of 50 feet. So we see time and time again projects that come in and they're allowed the parking, but then that almost automatically puts their building out of compliance for that setback, because a module of parking, by the way, is 1 full parking stall, an aisle, and then another parking stall. So they're allowed quite a bit of space. That's usually about 62 feet. So we're just trying to fix this constant need for an exception on that, so that if the parking is allowed based on the type of building, then they automatically get an exception. Well, it wouldn't be an exception. They would not have to meet the 50-foot building setback. So we're just trying to clean that up.
Is anybody here in the audience who came to speak to this item? Okay, so we'll close that. So we'll bring it back to the dais. Any questions for Kim on this?
I don't have questions. I just was looking at the figures, and it looks like there is some redundancy there. Just figure 78 is same as figure 119, 79 same as 120, 80 same as 121, 81 same as 122. So I just think for simplification's sake, it'd be nice to just have 4 figures instead of 8 when there's redundancy, but otherwise, no questions.
Any other comments? I'm happy to entertain a motion.
Do you want to make the motion with your corrections?
I don't know how I would do that.
Remove
I
redundancy.
can speak to that. We are
Yeah.
working on an overhaul of the entire chapter because if there are similar standards, each district, we've tried to put all of the standards, and so we are going with that approach. We haven't gotten the draft put together yet, but we do want to simplify it. There is a lot of repetitive things in there. What we were after, the original draft, whatever district you're located in, we just wanted all the standards so that you didn't, if you're in one district and it said see figure here, we tried to put each one so it was standalone, but we agree it just gets really lengthy, and we're going to try and compile or compress all that into a shorter version. So we're working on that, but we're happy to take whatever.
Well, and
direction.
sometimes you can do it where the figures are at the end of the chapter, so then they
Yeah.
just look and they can reference all the figures at the end. But
Yeah.
anyways,
Good idea. Yep.
I think it's fine written as it is. It's just, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance 12-2026. That's not it, sorry. We're on number 2.
Yeah.
See, I was ahead too. Okay, I move that we approve ordinance number 11-2026, approving a development code amendment to chapter 37, removing the exception for the maximum setback if there is a module of parking allowed.
So I have a first from Councilmember Stallings. Do I have a second?
I second that.
A second from Councilmember Freeman. Any questions? Councilmember Freeman, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Councilmember Stallings?
Yes.
Councilmember Lockhart?
Yes.
Councilmember Newell?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrison?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, now to 3. You've heard it before, but you're going to hear it again. Item number 3, consideration of ordinance 12-2026, approving the Vivian Estate Phase 5 zone change on 11.58 acres located at approximately 2125 north, 600 east, changing the zoning from TH5, transitional holding, to an RA1 residential agriculture. Is there someone from the developer who would like to speak? Welcome.
Thank you. Name's Austin Cooper with JDH. So this is the last phase of Vivian. We've done phase 1, 2. I think we're actually working through phase 2B and 3 right now with the city. And this is just in preparation to do the development on phase 5, get it from transition into a zone that we can work with. So pretty straightforward.
Is anyone from the general public here to make comment on this item? Okay, so we'll close that. Any questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor, if it's okay, I do. Have you gotten the water rights that you need for this development?
In the process of doing that, yeah. There's the family that owns the land. They have several water shares, and we're trying to figure out exactly how much they have compared to how much we need, and then figure out the difference. So.
Okay, and do you feel like you'll be able to meet the standards of the zone with the water shares that you need?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Happy to entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance number 12-2026, a zone district designation amendment and zoning district map amendment located approximately 2125 north, 600 east, changing the zoning from TH5 to RA1, including all the RC comments.
So I have a first from Councilmember Freeman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Newell. Any questions? Okay, we'll start with you, Councilmember Stallings.
Yes.
Councilmember Lockhart?
Yes.
Councilmember Newell?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrison?
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, item number 4, consideration of ordinance 13-2026, approving a development code amendment to Chapter 35, Urban Forestry, creating a limit on rock mulch. Kim.
Yes. So I think it's been 2 or 3 years ago we adopted some water conservation standards, and that was actually a requirement from the Central Utah Water Conservancy District. So we have existing standards in place. There is currently not a limit on how much rock mulch you can use in any given landscape setting. So this amendment would set a cap at 60% of your landscaped area could contain rock mulch. One thing I would want to make sure we keep in mind is even within that 60%, you still have to have 50% plant coverage. So it's just talking about the mulch that you would put in around your plantings. The reason that this has come up as a concern, I think it was originally raised by the Parks Department. They've seen some issues with when you have too much rock mulch around your trees, and it can absorb a lot of heat in the summer and reflect that heat, and it causes issues with plants, not just trees but other plants. So they felt like there should be some kind of an upper limit. There was a lot of debate if you read the Planning Commission minutes, and they went back and forth over different percentages and ended up landing back on the 60%. I think the original proposal was 30%. It would have limited it much more, but in discussions with engineering and parks and everyone, we settled on that 60% number. We all felt good about that. It limits the amount, but not extreme. I know there's concerns with our own road projects, for example, that would cause some difficulty to not be able to use more rock mulch than 30%. So, anyways, that's where we land. That's where the Planning Commission's recommendation landed. That's where the current draft is, with a limit of 60% rock mulch. So, happy to answer any other questions on the draft.
Is there anyone in the audience that came to speak to this item? Please state your name.
Eileen Miller with the Utah Valley Home Builders Association. 2 years ago in February, when the Utah Valley Conservancy District started their Flip the Strip program, Provo City appeared before my Government Affairs Committee, and in that committee we have several builders. Well, in an effort to conserve water and to try to basically do a pilot program on rock mulch, some of the builders had gone ahead before it was ever a proposal and had tried this out as part of their landscape. It was really interesting when Provo City showed up to our committee hearing, because we were able to convince them to do their own conservancy program. Provo City, as you know, has a lot of trees down the centers of their streets, and they're very proud of that because there's a lot of shaded areas to park. But anyway, through the course of that meeting, we were able to convince them, based on the builder's testimony, that those who had tried it in their landscape before found that putting rock up against a foundation radiates cold in the winter, which increased the heating bills, and radiated heat in the summer, which increased the cooling bills. So one of the other things we've been going around with on water, which, you know, he who owns the water rules the world right now, is people need to understand that water is really never lost. It's recycled. It's the most recycled substance of matter in our universe. And so people need to understand that there's an ecosystem that's under the dirt that is very vital for vegetation to grow on. One of the officials from Spanish Fork, the chief building official there, he testified that one of the problems that they had with the drip systems, they require a high amount of maintenance. and they're constantly being replaced. And also, the plants that rely on those, they lose more than half of them. So it all goes down to the radiation of the heat and the cold that has to do with rock mulch. So that's something that you might want to consider. So Provo abandoned their support for the Utah Water District Conservancy Districts program, and they came up with their own. And what they did is they held a big meeting between all of the departments in their city, and they brainstormed and came up with their own. So you might want to talk to Provo City and see how they resolved a lot of that issue, but it is a big problem. A lot of what happens too is that a lot of weeds, and then you're using a lot of chemicals to kill the weeds, and there's a layer of sediment that gathers over time between the rocks, so they grow a lot of weeds, and before long it becomes very unsightly. And so anyway, you might want to talk to Provo City and see how they resolve their issues with this. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Okay, so we'll close comments, bring it back to the dais. Any questions or comments for Kim?
Mr. Mayor, if I may. For Kim, so my front yard is xeriscaped, is how we purchased the home. I heard that if someone were to take it right from rock mulch or xeriscape to grass, that is there an approval process through that to be able to do that? Because obviously you're using additional water. I heard that, and I wasn't sure if that was true or not, so I wanted to ask.
Yeah, no, and I probably should have clarified. I mean, it's all, I guess, relevant to the overall discussion, but the standards that we're talking about tonight are only for non-residential uses. Residential homes are mentioned in our standards, but it's all recommendations. There's no fixed requirements. It just says that we encourage homeowners to follow the same principles, but it's not a firm standard. So these would apply more to, your office buildings, your commercial projects, churches, things like that. So.
I was wondering on page 35-12, it talks about the park strips for non-residential and multifamily residential use. This is the very top. It says, and should contain at least 50% living plant cover. And then it talks about organic mulch should be used within 3 feet of tree trunks. But then it says exceptions to the park strip requirements may be provided for public agencies, including Lehi City, administered transportation projects. So is it trying to say there's exceptions for public agencies or just transportation projects that are administered for public agencies? That's not clear. There's no. What is that? What does that mean?
The intent was whether it's UDOT or Lehi City, road projects could be exempt. A lot of times we'll put improvements in an area where sometimes even the downtown we put park strips in, and the homeowners don't want to maintain a park strip. So we've used rock in those areas just as to put something in there instead of just leaving it dirt. And I know UDOT has similar areas where it's hard to maintain. I think that's partly why Pioneer Crossing landscape didn't last very long and it got abandoned. It was dangerous for park staff to go out into the median. So I think it's trying to allow those situations. I don't know, Lauren, if you have any other thoughts, but if it's not clear, we're happy to
straighten it out.
Yeah.
I think it's just tough sometimes, those areas. It's narrow road. It's really tough to maintain it. Some of these, actually, he mentioned Pioneer. After a while, we wouldn't even send our crews out because it's so dangerous to be in that middle where you're maintaining some of this. In Pleasant Grove, they actually do have some in the middle, and they take care of it, but it's scary when they go out. I watch them. And so it's the intent is to give us an opportunity. That doesn't mean we can't put it in. It just gives us the opportunity if we need. Sometimes on the freeway, they don't want to water it. We don't want to have it watered. And so you'll see those rock mulch. But I think they try to make them more artistic as best they can.
I just wanted to clarify, the exception wasn't for all public agencies. It's for public agency transportation or administered transportation projects only, not for like Lehi City as an exception. It's just for the transportation project part of it, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're saying.
We could
We're
add-
not saying around City Hall or anything like
Yeah,
that.
I think that would be
That's
good to
probably good.
say that it's for transportation projects.
Just the way it's worded, it's a little confusing. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? I'm happy to talk about a motion.
Want to talk about it, or do you want one?
I'm happy to accept one, Councilmember Newell.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance 13-2026, approving a development code amendment to Chapter 35, urban forestry, creating a limit on rock mulch, and include the DRC comments.
I have a first from Councilmember Newell and second.
I would like to include Councilmember Freeman's changes. Do you have what you'd like it to be?
I would think instead, let's see, where's that? On D2, it would say exceptions to the parkship requirements may be provided for public agencies, administered transportation projects, and then in parentheses you can put including Lehi City. I just think that makes more sense.
If you'll adopt that, then I'll second that.
Yep.
Okay, seconded.
So second by Councilmember Lockhart. Any questions on that? Councilmember Lockhart, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Councilmember Newell?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrison?
Yes.
Councilmember Freeman?
Yes.
Councilmember Stallings?
Yes.
That's the last item there. We have one additional item tonight, and it's the discussion of mixed-use zoning requirements. This one we transfer from our previous meeting, so there will be no public comment on this. Kim, I'll turn it over to you to lead the discussion.
Okay, thank you. So we have our mixed use zone currently allows multifamily as a standalone use. The mixed use zone, our primary focus in a lot of what's in our current code is Main Street and State Street, those two historical areas. There are a few other areas, for example, North Center Street where Ivory Ridge, that area is mixed use. It's within their area plan, but it's designated as mixed use. So really a lot of the focus is on these historical state and main areas. So as we've had some projects come in, specifically some of these standalone. We had a residential project, I think it's been about a year, maybe a year and a half ago, come in on State Street. And the question was, shouldn't we always require commercial with a mixed-use project? If we really want true mixed use, let's have a set requirement for the commercial component. So we looked at it. The first approach was just a very straightforward, any mixed use project, you've got to have 10% minimum commercial. But as we did some research and looked at other cities, not only in Utah, but outside of Utah, what we found is that you can end up with projects that are kind of defunct because it's hard to force commercial. I think you've all seen as we've developed, it's hard to guarantee that you're going to have a commercial use in certain areas. The commercial tends, it's very fickle and it needs certain criteria with rooftops and things like that, location. So the current draft is trying to strike a balance between, we want to avoid those single use, just straight residential projects, but then we don't want to get so restrictive that we lock everything down because somebody might have a piece that's a little bit off the main road and there's no real true viability for the commercial. So I guess just to summarize really quick, what we've done is we've tried to break it down for projects over 2 acres and projects under 2 acres. So if you're over 2 acres, we actually would like to require that you have more of a unified plan. So there could be multiple owners within that 2 acres. Or maybe they consolidate and buy up a bunch of properties and it's one developer. But if it's over 2, we feel like they have an opportunity to do a little bit more master planning and actually require in that larger property that they have a certain percent commercial, which we're proposing would be 10%. And then on the smaller projects that are less than 2 acres, you could have standalone residential, but you would have to show certain things, like if it was within, I think it's 600 feet of an existing commercial area. So that we're trying to show, you know, if they can prove that, hey, we're still contributing to this mixed use area. We may not have commercial in our building, but we're close by commercial, so people who live there still have access to that, and it creates this mixed use neighborhood that we're after. It also has a few other exemptions. If it's less than 6 units, there is no requirement for the commercial if it's just 6 or less residential units. Some of the other things, we do feel really strongly if we can, when we tried to identify if they have actual frontage on Main Street, State Street, or if they do choose to do more of a master plan and they have a street, let's say, you know, if we took State Street and they have a street within their project that directs people towards the future transit station, and we know that's going to be more of an active corridor where you'll have people walking. We want to see that commercial on the ground floor, so we would require it in those instances. The other flexible part that we feel like we should include is, let's say a project, you know, we don't have the transit yet. Somebody wants to build something near that future station along State Street, but it may be, you know, 5-10 years before we really feel like the viability is there for commercial. So they can build the building in a way that sets up that ground floor for retail when the time is ready, when it's ripe. But in the meantime, they could use it as residential, so it would kind of phase into it. So anyways, I think those are kind of the basics of what we're proposing. But we are, you know, we don't claim that this is a perfect ordinance. That's why it's on for just a general discussion. We'd love to hear your feedback. Are we generally heading in a direction you like? Or would you like to go more towards just, you know, we just have a firm requirement, 10%, any project, and call it good. So,
Thanks, Kim. Any comments, Councilmember Dole?
I know when we talked about this, Kim, like I wanted it to be really close to TOD and a 30%, and you explained why you were concerned about that. I almost wonder though if we had other, depending on the size of the project, as the size and acreage goes up, maybe we can increase that requirement. I can understand where there was a concern if it's under 2 acres and some of these smaller ones, but maybe when they're larger in size, we can have a higher requirement of, and just seeing if you felt like that would still work within your concerns. Also, I think an important part of that is that the 30% of housing needs to be for individual ownership. Mm-hmm. So, and that was also paralleling with the TOD. But yeah, I was wondering if we might be able to kind of get that range. I know that other council members, when they have talked about this too, that, you know, to be able to try and get more commercial. So maybe there's ways that we can do that and make sure that mixed use does have that component.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, for me, I would support increasing the minimum of non-residential. I think, you know, this kind of first, from my observation of the previous council, kind of first surfaced when we were looking at they were looking at TODs versus mixed use, and TOD has a requirement, but mixed use doesn't. So oftentimes mixed use is just used as an excuse to build high density, and then there's none of the actual mixed part of it, right? So I think I would love to see that increased in all plots of land, facets of that. One question I had was, would parking requirements be in here, or is it that separate parking table?
Yeah,
that would be in that separate parking table. Okay. And then under C3 and D2, it talks about how let's see, I'm trying to look here so I know exactly where. Page 38-18. How if there's alternative phasing and if the applicant demonstrates that site, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, the Planning Commission can approve this alternative phasing. Is that something that the Planning Commission normally does? Is that something that could just come back to city council. I just really like having things go to city council if possible instead of planning commission. I know that there are certain requirements for planning commission to have certain items, but I just really like having elected officials make decisions about things like that.
Yeah, we could put the council in place of the planning commission for sure.
So that would be, I think on 38-18, it's C3, and then I believe it's down the next page. It says D2, and it also says, as other community, blah, 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 as approved by the planning commission. So I would love it to not really skip city council, I guess. So if you say planning commission and city council, or if to make it easier for I don't know if that makes it easier for the applicant, if it makes it harder. I'd like it to be easier for the applicant personally. I want us to have development that's smart and balanced and thoughtful. And so whatever way we can do that.
Would you support still having it go through the planning commission process, but end with the city council, right? Is that what I'm hearing you say? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that it shouldn't end with planning commission. If it can go through an elected body, I believe it should.
Kim, I want to make sure I was understanding you correctly. So, if a parcel under 2 acres is close enough to mixed use and they want to just have residential, they can make a claim that they're contributing to the commercial around them. I take major issue with that. I don't know. That just seems very odd from anything we've done in the past. And I think it challenges some of it challenges the use entirely. The standards within the standards you should comply to. If they want to create like a application around merging, multiple property owners coming together with a grand idea, that's one thing. But just because you happen to be near commercial doesn't mean you're absolved of your commercial responsibilities. And so that is a part of this that I have concerns with. But I'm looking forward to kind of strengthening the mixed use zone. I just am very concerned about that opt-out option for parcels less than 2 acres.
A couple questions and lots of comments. Why is this in the Chapter 38 TOD rather than just under zoning districts, or is there a reason?
We felt like it would fit there. Basically what we do right now, Chapter 38 is exclusively for TODs, but where these two are so closely related, we just thought Chapter 5, it gives a kind of an overview, a really broad description of each zone. But then with a lot of, planned community, a lot of those zones, then you have a whole chapter dedicated that drills down and gets into all the details. So it was just a way we felt like it might fit with the organization, but we're not married to that either. If you want to move it somewhere else, we can.
I just wonder if it would be hard for people to find.
Yeah,
like
when
to
we
look
would,
up code.
you didn't receive we have the full draft, and the reason we didn't give you all of it because you have 12 pages that nothing changed on. But at the very beginning of that chapter, we would call it TOD and mixed use standards, so that it's clear that both standards are in that chapter.
Okay, that makes sense.
Great question.
Appreciate your work as always. I do have a lot of concerns. I think mixed use has been a problem since the general plan got updated several years ago. And one of the big problems that I don't see addressed in this update is just how to distribute the maximum number of units allowed in each, pod of mixed use, I guess. I haven't seen it lately, but for a while we were getting people coming in who first come gets all the density and leaves little for anybody else. So I would love to see that addressed a little more, or some at all. The other thing is I've never been a big fan of mixed use. I just don't see it working very well as far as the walkability, the intent there. But as you pointed out, most of these are on State Street and on Main Street. And to me, those are wonderful commercial corridors. And I get we have a station area plan and that sort of thing. But I would like to see more emphasis on the commercial part with the option to add some housing. And right now it's kind of a default. To me, it's kind of a high density workaround, right? You know, it's a way to get high density and not necessarily the commercial, so it's not really a mixed use. So I personally would like to see more emphasis on the commercial, especially in these areas. And I'm not thrilled with the idea of I think it's in C2, there's a trigger, I guess, that 60% residential can receive the certificate of occupancy, while that main floor non-residential could just be an empty shell. And I just would hate to see a lot of empty building space on the bottom floor. Especially on the bottom floor, they'll have to build that anyway to get the rest of it. So I'm not a big fan of that. I agree with Councilmember Freeman. I want the final decisions to come to the City Council. The other thing, too, is there's a couple places where you just refer to the city. This is one I see here is in C5. The city may approve a land use plan. That probably needs to be defined who is that, staff, or if it's land use plan, again, I'd like it to come back to City Council. But I think there were a couple of instances of that language. So those are the main things. I deal with the residential area. And honestly, again, a lot of us have been talking about the need to have more commercial. And if the direction you're going with mixed use is to have more apartments and a little bit of commercial, that might be appropriate for some areas, but maybe we might want to look at changing zoning then and make some areas just more commercial rather than mixed use. Had another thought, but it just slipped my mind, so I guess I'll end there. I can email you if it comes up. Thank you.
Yeah, no, great input. Thanks.
Any other comments for Kim? Kim, does that give you a good road to run on?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got a lot of notes, so we'll go back to the drawing board.
That's perfect. That's what we were hoping for. Everyone's comfortable with council given, so that's great. Well, to end our meeting tonight, I appreciate the council, appreciate each of you who've come and participated. It's important that you come and hear and see and have an opportunity to speak, so we do appreciate that you came tonight. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved. I second it.
That is the longest wait I've ever. So we have
Just
a motion
having so
from
much fun. We don't want to leave.
Councilmember Newell.
Yeah.
And I have a second from Councilmember Freeman.
It was me, but that's
excuse
fine.
me, Councilmember Lockhart. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you again for coming.
Mike, so like.
I know.